Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Board of Directors meeting for December 18th, 2018. I'd like to welcome a large crowd that we have here in our audience tonight. Thank you all for being here as we charge forward through the holidays. At this time, we're going to get into our city business, but first we need to see officially who's here. So, Madam Clerk, if you would, please read the roll.
Director Hendricks, Director Richardson, here. Director Peck, here. Director Hines, Director Wright, here. Director Wyrick, Director Campuras, Director Fortson, here. Director Adcock, Vice Mayor Webb, here. Mayor Stodola.
Here. Let me call on City Director Doris Wright for our invocation, please.
May we bow our heads, please. Heavenly Father, thank you for the opportunity to be of service to the people of Little Rock. As we proceed to do the city's business, we pray, Lord God, that you will guide our minds and our thoughts. And Lord, we just lift up our police officers, our firefighters, and our frontline workers out there, Lord. And we pray that you would bless them and be a blessing to their families this holiday season and keep them safe. Father, thank you for grace and mercy. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Amen. If you would please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our first order of business is to take care of a few presentations, and we're very proud to have another Little Rock school that's got a state championship under their belt. I'd like to congratulate the Little Rock Christian Academy state champions and call on City Director Lance Hines to do the honors.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, fellow board members, Bruce and Tom and Susan. Very proud to be here today. My daughter is in the graduating class at Little Rock Christian. And also served as football manager, so she's been very involved, as I have had a lot of these young guys over to the house, been around them at the gym, and since they were, especially the senior class, since they were freshmen. On Sunday, December 2nd, 2018, the Little Rock Christian Warriors won the 5A state football championship in front of a crowd of 10,762 at War Memorial Stadium. The score was 52-38 over crosstown rivals Pulaski Academy. This gave the Warriors a season record of 13 wins and only 1 loss. This is the first state football championship for the Warriors and was their first appearance in the football championship game since 2007. On the way to the championship game, they defeated Greenbrier, Texarkana, and Morrilton. After being down 14-0 early in the first quarter, Little Rock Christian came back to tie the game in the same quarter. Though trailing by 10 points at halftime, the Warriors had an explosive second half, scoring 31 points and holding the Bruins to only 7 more points. 4 Warriors were named 2018 All-State: Kendall Givens, MJ Loggins, Garrett Sansom, and Justice Hill. Mr. Hill was also named the MVP of the championship game, as well as the Gatorade Arkansas Football Player of the Year. Eric Koyu is the head football coach. He was named the 5A Head Coach of the Year. The assistant coaching staff includes Brandon Middleton, Lance Clark, Brian Gibson, Jonathan Stone, Dustin Grimmett, Eric Allen, Cherokee Streetman, Boyd Borshears, Jace Munns, Jackson Cole, and Joe Teague. Dr. Gary Arnold is head of school. Dr. Justin Smith is the upper school principal, and Johnny Watson is the athletic director. I guess what we want to do here is I've got a plaque to present to Coach Koyu and the team. So I don't know how you want. We got a lot of kids here, so I don't know how you want to do it, Coach. But we'd love to get everybody up, as our tradition is, each one of the players to come up and introduce themselves, and if they're a senior, know where they're going to go to school, to tell us that, and then we'll recognize the parents and everything. So I've got a plaque here. It says, Mayor Mark Stodola, the City Board of Directors, and City Manager Bruce T. Moore congratulate the Little Rock Christian Academy 5A football state champions. In the quest for the championship, the players and coaches exemplified outstanding sportsmanship, participation, leadership, responsibility, and teamwork. December 18th, 2018. Congratulations, Coach.
Thank you, ladies. You're welcome. You're welcome.
you say a few words and then.
On behalf of Little Rock Christian, I want to thank the board for this recognition, and it is our absolute honor to add to the rich tradition of Little Rock football. These guys did their part this year, so I want to give them all the credit, and thank you all so much for the recognition. Thank you so much.
And before the guys come up and introduce themselves, I know that these accomplishments don't happen without the support of parents, teachers, coaches, and administrators. If any of y'all are with us today, which I think is a lot of the room, would y'all please stand and be recognized by the board? If you're a parent, teacher, coach, please stand. All right, gentlemen, we're gonna start with seniors first, or y'all parade your way up here, introduce yourself, and if you're a senior, know where you're going to school, let us know that. Come on, Robert Springer, get up here. And Coach, I can call some of them out by name because I know most of them, so.
My name is Lawson Howard. I'm a senior. I don't know where I want to play football yet in college, but I have options.
Hello, I'm Jack Mabry, also a senior, and I'll be attending the University of Arkansas.
Alex Clark, also a senior, and I'll be going to Fayetteville also.
I'm Matthew Ware. I'm also a senior, and I'm unsure where I'll be attending college next year.
I'm Grant McElmurray. I'm also a senior, and I'm not sure where I'll be attending college either.
I'm Robert Springer, and I'm a senior as well, and I'm undecided.
MJ Loggins, and I don't know where I will be playing college ball next year, but it'll be coming up soon.
I'm Colin Grigsby. I'm a senior, and I will be going to the Air Force to be a pilot.
All right.
My name's Alex Rogers, and I'll be attending the University of Arkansas.
I'm Garrett Sansom, and I will be attending the University of Arkansas.
I'm Philip DeLeo, and I don't know where I'm going yet.
I'm McLean Leach. I'm going to the University of Arkansas.
I'm Lawson Corcoran. I'm a senior, and I'm unsure yet.
I'm Luke Sheffield, and I'm going to the University of Arkansas.
I'm Jake McDonald. I'm going to the University of Arkansas.
I'm Bernard Givens, and my college is undecided yet.
We got some more.
Wait, I know we got some more players. Come on. Juniors. And Coach, what I think we'll do, since we got so many here, is we'll go down into the rotunda and take a picture with all you guys. I'll come down there and take a picture with you guys on the steps. If you decided, go ahead, my friend. Go ahead, Kendall.
I'm Kendall Givens. I'm a junior, and I don't know where I'm going to college yet.
William Parker Kerfoot. I'm a junior.
Pearson Dennis. I'm a junior.
Eli Johns. I'm a junior.
I'm Ben James. I'm a junior. Joshua Baker. I'm a junior.
Noah Carr. I'm a junior.
Brett Smith, junior.
Alexander Vesey. I'm a junior.
Andre Brunson. I'm a junior.
Jackson Woodard. I'm a junior.
Chris Hightower. I'm a junior.
Akeem Gilmore. I'm a junior.
Seth McCullough. I'm a junior.
Patrick Gladden. I'm a junior. Matthew Bennett. I'm a junior.
Colin Cooper, and I'm a sophomore.
Nathan Warford, and I'm a sophomore.
Isaiah Hankins, I'm a sophomore.
Corey Platt, I'm a sophomore.
Nick Turner, I'm a sophomore.
I'm Dane Justice, and I'm a sophomore.
I'm John Trisman, and I'm a sophomore.
I'm Gabe King, and I'm a sophomore.
My name is Benjamin Kelly, I'm a sophomore.
Connor Whipple, I'm a sophomore.
I'm Nathan Spanner, I'm a sophomore.
Evan Parnell, I'm a sophomore.
Luke Lee, and I'm a sophomore.
I'm Max Wong, I'm a freshman.
I'm Cole McCarr, and I'm a freshman.
I'm Titus Cokewood, I'm a freshman.
I'm Miles Howard, I'm a freshman.
Thank you, Coach, and thank you, team. You're so very well organized. I think we've never had them all line up by grade like that before, but good luck next year.
Hey, Lance, Mayor.
Yes.
also want to, there's two city connections that I want to point out. Kevin Howard has two sons that played on the team, and then Paula Patterson has a grandson that plays on the team.
Very good. And parents, thank you so much for raising some great kids. We appreciate it.
See you Thursday night. Thursday, where you gonna be?
Okay, we can now move on to one of our next items, which is our Neighborhoods USA drawing, Christmas drawing. So let me, Director Adcock, we're going to do our Christmas drawing now for Noosa.
Merry Christmas. I just want to say good evening to Mayor Stodler and say what a privilege and blessing it's been to get to know you over the years.
Well, thank you.
I'll miss you when I come down here and you're not here.
Well, I might be sitting down there with you.
Absolutely. I'm hoping so. And also I want to recognize City Manager Bruce Moore, the Board of Directors, and our Director of Housing and Neighborhood Programs, Mr. Victor Turner. Is he here? Yeah. He's our great supporter over here. And Director Adcock, you know that she fights for us 24/7, 365 days of the year. So right now I want to introduce our newly elected National Noosa Board member, Dwight Pridgeon, who also serves as a resource person on the Resource Committee. He serves in program capacity on the Program Committee and the Membership Drive with the National Noosa. I just want to ask him to come up and say something first.
Thank you, Mayor, members and boards. Yeah, I've been serving Noosa, been with Noosa since 2007. I started Noosa when I first started with the City of Little Rock. I finally decided to go ahead and join the Noosa Board of Directors back last year, and I'm excited to do it. And I'm proud to represent the City of Little Rock.
We're glad you're doing it. Thank you.
Okay, we're not going to take up much of your time. We also have another board member with National Noosa, Sandy Becker, and he may show up later. We're going to go ahead on and begin our drawing. We have 14 prizes this year. We have 14 prizes, a 65-inch smart high-definition television. It's an LG. We have a Bass Pro gift card for $100, a Come and Go gift card for $50, a one-night stay with breakfast, valet parking at the Little Rock Marriott. We have, and that's valued at $225. We also have a dinner with the Little Rock Marriott, net value at $100. The Love Neighborhood cash gift card for $100. Pecan Lake gift basket valued at $100. A one-year membership with Jim Daly Fitness Center, $180. One-year membership with the Little Rock Zoo family of 4. That's valued at, I'm not sure. It's priceless. We also have a Valero gift card for $50, a cash gift card for $100 from Sandy Becker, one of our board members, a necklace from Kay's Jeweler, $100, a $50 gift card from John Bear Neighborhood Association, and a gift basket from Pembroke Clover Hill Neighborhood Association, Miss Molly's Neighborhood Association, and it's a beautiful package. I know I sent pictures to you. Would you share that at some point with them so they can see that? Okay, and I need to mention that Crane Chevrolet donated the 65-inch color TV. They're one of our faithful supporters. Our first ticket is for Sherry Enoch.
What does she win?
She will be the person that calls in. She gets first choice out of the 14 gifts.
I bet we can guess on that one.
Number 2.
Sure, Director Adcock, go ahead, please.
I will tell y'all that Pat Becker was drawn first in one of our drawings, and she was given the opportunity to select the TV or any of the prizes that she wanted. And she selected a meal with the mayor instead of a 60-inch TV. And
it was a great lunch, and I was honored to buy it for her.
And the next year, she was one of the winners, and she looked at the list, and again, she selected the meal with the mayor.
See, if you go back a second time, you really get to know what's going on.
That's right. That's right.
I'm surprised I haven't had anybody at Citizen Communications that's, done that.
Okay, our second winner is Brooks Lilly. Our third winner, Melvin Stinnett. Is number 5 or 4? Number 4, B.J. Wyrick. That just lets you know how many tickets she has in there, because Dwight has been spinning this drum, I know, for 45 minutes this evening. Number 5, Shirley Henry. Number 6, Virgil Harness. He is a new citizen of Little Rock via Iowa who's employed with Amtrak. You have to know people that you're selling these tickets to, because you want them to come back the next year. This looks like Sophronia Turner. Number 8, Morris Hunter. Number 9, Nancy Pruitt. Number 10, Caleb Malachi. Number 11, Joe Selby. Number 12, Sam. Number 13, Joe Selby. That's what it says, Sam. Number 13 is Joe Selby. Number 14 is Carrie Young. I'm just kidding. Number 14 is Sean Overton. And we sold a total of 400 plus tickets at $10 a ticket. And thank you all so much. Thank you for all your support.
And thank you, Carrie.
Oh, one other thing. This is very important. To all of our winners, you may pick up your prizes at the West Central Resource Center between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. tomorrow. That address is 4200 John Bear Road, Suite C. The contact information, 501-565-4807. That's the office number. Contact number for Mrs. Dean, 501-366-0728. The contact number for Ms. Young, 501-766-3317. Thank you all.
Go ahead, Director Hancock.
Yes, Mayor, Mr. Scott Carter would like to come and also make a presentation to Team Noosa.
Thank you. Earlier today, Team Noosa was recognized as the Little Rock Convention and Visitors Bureau Rock Star for bringing the Noosa Conference here in 2020. And so on behalf of the Convention Bureau and Director Hancock, I'm merely the conduit to present this to Team Noosa.
Very good. Y'all been rock stars for a long time. Bringing it here, not just once, but
3 times now.
3 times. So that really is a great honor for the city. Okay.
Mayor, do you remember what they announced today? Maybe Mr. Carter does. How many millions of dollars the convention center has in conferences coming here?
$35 million
Worth
of conferences. And there were 43 different organizations that were recognized, and I think we probably should also acknowledge that Bruce Moore for the NFBPA, the National Forum of Black Political Administrators, in 2017 was recognized as a rock star.
You.
And yours truly was recognized as a rock star as well for bringing 3 National League Cities meetings to Little Rock for some total of $850,000.
And also Chief Falk was on that list today.
Yeah, and Alice, yes, and Chief Falk. I can't remember what the exact meeting was, Chief.
Our CALEA accreditation.
That's right.
We have a CALEA conference. Actually, it'll be in 2020, and right now there are only 15 police agencies worldwide that are TRIARC accredited, and we are going for that accreditation. We just got our training division accredited, so we're the 34th out of 18,000 police departments in the United States.
Well, we're very pleased to have that CALEA conference here, and wish you great luck on getting the training division certified, as I know we have had some of our other divisions certified as well. You know, that's a lot of stuff that sometimes goes under the radar screen. People don't realize what these professional certifications mean in terms of the training that in this instance in particular, our police department goes through. Very good. Well, it really kind of tells them a lot about the love that everybody has for the city. So since I've got the opportunity to say this, one of the things that our AMP Commission is doing, and both Director Peck and Director Fortson have serve on the AMP Commission, and that is to ask our citizens who are affiliated in some fashion or another with an organization, be it a local, a state, or a national organization, to talk up the city as a place where these conferences and conventions can be held. And to do what you can to try and bring them there. You know, our A&P Commission and our Little Rock Convention and Visitors Bureau staff will work very hard. They'll go with you to the conferences to try and sell and pitch the organization and pitch our city. So hopefully those people watching tonight will have an opportunity to think back on their organizations. And we got lots of we got a lot of faith conferences that go as well. So it's not just business and organizations, but it's faith organizations. It's actually even reunions, family reunions. We get a lot of family reunions that do it as well. So please send the word out about how great it is to hold a conference and convention here in our city. Okay, we got one other presentation, and I'm going to ask Kathy Webb to handle the gavel for a moment as I come down to the podium. I believe this will probably be my last proclamation. I'm not absolutely sure of that. There's still, I guess, 10 or 11 or 12 days. I haven't really counted it out yet quite to see how many there are, so it's still possible. But this is certainly going to be one of the most significant proclamations that I've issued during my tenure as mayor. We are going to recognize tonight Charles Bussey, one of our former city directors, elected at large by the citizens of Little Rock. Also, the first black mayor of this city, respected by his own colleagues and elected to that position by his colleagues. And someone that, when I became the city attorney, was a gentleman who took me under his wing, really helped me as a young lawyer in many, many respects. I have a very deep and fond affection for Mayor Bussey, and some of the things that he would do and reach out to help young people, not just young people of his own race, but young people everywhere. He probably, and I've made this comment and I've heard other people make it, he probably did as much as anyone humanly possible to help integrate our city employee workforce while his tenure was on the city board. Truly a real strength of the city. So I am very honored to issue this proclamation tonight. And it reads as follows: Know ye all people by these presents greetings. Whereas Charles Bussey was born on December 18th, 1918 in Stamps, Arkansas, and moved to Little Rock after attending Bishop College and serving in the Army in World War II. And whereas Mr. Bussey worked to encourage other African-American veterans of the war to be engaged in Little Rock civic life, and whereas Mr. Bussey was the first African-American sheriff's deputy in Pulaski County, serving from 1950 to 1969, and helped organize and manage the junior deputy baseball program, and whereas in 1968, Charles Bussey became the first African-American elected to a municipal office in Little Rock since Reconstruction, when he won a citywide race for the Little Rock City Board of Directors. And whereas in November 1981, Charles Bussey Jr. was named mayor of Little Rock, becoming the first African-American to ever hold that position. And whereas Mr. Bussey served a total of 20 years on the City Board of Directors, including a record 8.5 years as assistant mayor. And whereas Charles Bussey Jr. counted among his friends everyone from U.S. Senator Ted Kennedy to Congressman Wilbur Mills to poet Maya Angelou, and to thousands of youth who participated in programs that he championed. And whereas Mr. Bussey organized and produced the Center Stage television show and was influential in negotiating the formation of the Black Access Channel number 14 here in Little Rock. He was also active in numerous civic and fraternal organizations. And whereas Charles Bussey Jr. married Maggie B. Clark on October 6, 1945, with the couple having 2 sons that were married and he was married for over 50 years until his passing on June 15, 1996. And whereas among the accolades received since his passing are induction into the Arkansas Black Hall of Fame, inclusion in the Arkansas Civil Rights Heritage Trail, and the August 2005 renaming of 20th Street in Little Rock to Charles Bussey Avenue. And whereas December 18th, 2018 marks 100 years since the birth of the trailblazing public servant who is Charles Bussey Jr. Now therefore, we, Mark Stodela, Mayor of the City of Little Rock, Arkansas, and Bruce T. Moore, Manager of the City of Little Rock, Arkansas, do hereby proclaim this day as a commemoration of the centennial of the birth of Charles Bussey Jr. here in the City of Little Rock, and we call upon all of our citizens to join us in expressing appreciation for the life and legacy of this man who was described as a man for his time in extraordinary times. In witness thereof, we have hereunto set our hands and seals on this 18th day of December 2018. Happy birthday, Charles Bussey.
As the mayor mentioned, we will send. We have three original copies of the proclamation that we're going to send to his two children.
And let's also record one in the official minutes of the city clerk's records as well. Mayor Bussey was fond to bring his briefcase to this dais. And for those of you who served with him, and I do think we still have some here, he also wanted to make sure we were protected. Having been a deputy sheriff, he carried two pearl-handled revolvers in his briefcase, so we all felt protected at the time. I don't know that he ever needed to use those. Certainly not in my presence, but I swear I did see them. He opened the briefcase and showed me these beautiful pearl-handled revolvers. So he was a unique man and a wonderful man for the city. Okay, we can now move on to the Board of Directors agenda, and we have some modifications. Only one, which is a resolution dealing with prevention and intervention treatment programs. It's an ordinance. Is there any objection to having this grouped? Second. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed say nay. Okay, it'll be grouped with the rest of the ordinances. We can now move on to the consent agenda, which is items 1 through 13. Madam Clerk, if you would please read the consent agenda.
The consent agenda consists of a resolution to set January 22nd, 2019 as the date of public hearing on an appeal of the Planning Commission's action in denying a conditional use permit to allow a subdivision management office in community building to be located on the R2 single-family district zone property located within the Valley Spring Cottages subdivision located at the southwest corner of Geyer Springs Road and Valley Drive in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes, a resolution to require the 2018 audit to be performed in accordance with the guidelines and format prescribed by the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, and the United States Government Accountability Office, and for the purposes, a resolution to authorize the city manager to enter into an agreement with BKD LLP to provide certified public accounting services to the city of Little Rock, Arkansas for the period ended 2018 to 2022. And for the purposes, a resolution authorizes the city manager to enter into a contract with the Pulaski County Special School District for a school resource officer program in the Pulaski County School District for 2018-2019 school year, beginning July 1st, 2018 and ending July 30th, 2019. And for the purposes, a resolution authorizes the city manager to enter into a contract with Landscape Structures Incorporated for a total contract amount of $464,078.56 for the construction and installation of 4 new playgrounds located at Hanger Hill, Canis, Ottenheimer, and Reservoir Parks. And for the purposes, a resolution authorizes the city manager to enter into a public agency service agreement to provide fleet maintenance, repair, and fueling services for the Little Rock Convention and Visitors Bureau vehicles and equipment. And for the purposes, A resolution to authorize the city manager to enter into contracts to provide prevention and intervention and treatment funds for after-school, out-of-school time positive prevention programs for 2019 is endorsed by the Commission on Children, Youth, and Families and for the purposes. A resolution to authorize the city manager to enter into contracts to provide prevention, intervention, and treatment funds for after-school, out-of-school time youth intervention programs for 2019 as endorsed by the Commission on Children, Youth, and Families and for the purposes. A resolution to certify local government endorsement of the United Parcel Service Incorporated located at 5501 Fish Dam Pike, Little Rock, Arkansas to participate in the Arkansas Tax Back Program as authorized by Arkansas Code Section 15-4-2706D of the Consolidated Incentive Act of 2003 and for the purposes. A resolution authorizes the city manager to enter into a contract with American Structure Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $161,331.50 to build a quarantine area as an addition to the Little Rock Animal Village and for the purposes. A resolution authorizes the city manager to execute a contract with Enterprise FM Trust in an amount not to exceed $1,885,000 plus applicable taxes and fees for an annual purchase order to lease 71 vehicles for year 2 of the 5-year replacement plan for the Little Rock Police Department and for the purposes. A resolution to ratify reappointments to the Central Arkansas Library Systems Board of Trustees and for the purposes. A resolution to ratify an appointment to the Little Rock Advertising and Promotion Commission and for the purposes. That concludes the consent agenda.
There's a motion and a second to adopt the consent agenda. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, saying nay. The consent agenda has been adopted. We can now move on to the grouped items, items 14 through 18, and the M1 modification, please. Director Richardson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Bruce, Chief Falk, Chief Finks. On resolution number 11, have we done any kind of assessment or analysis on the impact of the take-home cars that leave the city on a daily basis, the impact that it has on the need for or the frequency for us to replace police vehicles?
Director Richardson, we have, as you know, I think it was a year ago, we put together a plan moving forward. I mentioned at that point that because of the number of vacancies, I didn't want to implement it, but now that we are pretty close to full staff, it's my intention to move forward with that, and that was going to be a discussion item with the next chief.
And is it not financially feasible for us to have, I think we talked about it at one point in time, for having as an incentive take-home cars for the officers who lived in the city of Little Rock, and have we done any other further analysis of that in terms of encouraging? I think the take-home cars have some value to our officers, and the analysis of the impact of financially, can we do that? And then also, I think it speaks to a lot of these cars leaving Little Rock on a daily basis. It gives the appearance that we're subsidizing the public safety of some of these outlying communities. So have we looked at that incentive program anymore?
We have, in fact, the recommended policy change dealt with, from the middle of the city going out to a certain outside the miles from the heart of the city. So that's what we're working on, and that was the plan that I presented. And at some point, we will get there. I mean, this is 61 vehicles. As you know, since the sales tax, we invested heavily in police vehicles. But it is a matter of financially being able to have enough vehicles in your pool to be able to allow officers to take them home.
Thank you. And also on the PIT, Mayor, we're allowed to raise questions on that. The PIT programs that were recommended for funding, I know that Future Little Rock, I think, Dan, you were part of that, was passed in 1993, which provided the funding for PIT. And I think that they added PIT to the sales tax, because previous sales tax that just focused on more police or bigger jails didn't pass. And I think that the city had added PIT as part of an initiative to get incentives to get this passed. And a lot of people don't know that initial $3 million amount was based on the cost it would cost the city to hire 135 additional new police officers, 45 a year, and I think that's how we got at that 3 million figure. In the recession of 2008, made us take 500,000 away from that. So, with respect to that point, it seems like there seems to be a lot of focus on who's getting the funding rather than what's happening with the funding and the impact it is having on juvenile justice reform. I know quite a while back, when we were dealing with disproportionate minority confinement, black youth were 6 times more likely, Hispanic youth were 4 times more likely to be confined than white youth, even they had the same charges, same backgrounds, and same history. And that was a disproportionate minority confinement. I think that was a statewide initiative, and I think it had real significant impact on minority youth in the city of Little Rock and their ability to progress and have productivity with their lives. And do we even know that rate anymore? Because I think the initial part of PIT was centered around juvenile justice reform and providing opportunities that centered on services that was going to help connect these young people, particularly gang-involved youth, to supportive systems. And it seems to me like whenever this comes up, the question centers around focus on who's getting the funding rather than what's being done with the funding. So are we looking at that, Bruce, Dana, or Barbara?
Let me ask the Director of Community Programs to come forward, Mr. Sett.
Thank you to the mayor, to the vice mayor, and to the board of directors. To answer your question, the short answer is yes. We're actually in the process now with the youth master plan. That's part of what it allowed us to do, is to be able to look at how the funds are spent, why they are being funded, and to be able to make adjustments as necessary. So the short answer is yes. To give you more information on how that is, I can give you one example. That is a change that we're going through this next year with looking at the YIP programs and the 12 to 17 programs, because we have seen some disparity in the numbers of just basically how teens attend programs now. And so we're starting to look at what are different options that we may have to provide services, appropriate services that would attract teens and be able to make the turns that we would like. Some of that information has been coming to us from our street team intelligence, if you will, because as they interact with the teens on the street, they're coming back to say some of them are in the programs because they're not program type youth, but there are other ideas and activities that they would come for. And so we want to be able to engage them in that conversation, because that's actually goal 5, is to include youth voice in what we do, and that's happening next year. So again, the short answer is yes, that's exactly part of what we're looking at. That's what the youth master plan was set up to allow us to do and to have those types of conversations, and we're moving towards that on schedule for next year.
So are there plans to have the street teams eventually put on full-time? Because I understand they're working on a part-time basis, and in the past when we've had crisis intervention teams, they were full-time and sometimes beyond full-time. I mean, it was 24/7 in many cases because they were dealing with crises that happened long after 5 o'clock, sometimes well into the night, and we utilize them to help facilitate some of these conflicts between rival gangs. So do we have plans on putting them full-time? Because I understand they're part-time right now, and we only have 5, correct?
Right. They actually work 25 hours a week. So although it's part-time, it is 25 hours, and sometimes they do work more than that. It kind of depends on, because like you said, they are on call. I won't say we have plans for that, but it is definitely part of a conversation. It comes up and we review it at the time. We review what's going on in the city at the time. What we don't want to happen is, I won't say that what we don't want to happen. There are some things that we're moving towards with that population that will allow them to have a more meaty, if you will, responsibility should they go full-time, because we want to make sure that they have activities that require a full-time commitment.
And with respect to the services, we keep making reference to the master plan. Has there been some kind of objective analysis in terms of what kind of supportive services, research-based practices that we're utilizing to help us move forward with juvenile justice reform?
Yes, and that actually is going on right now as we speak. I have a report that's due to me by the end of the year on exactly how the first 2 years were and what they look like, where we are in terms of our contracts and our goals that had objectives to them and timed objectives. So yes, we are looking at that right now.
And connecting it to some kind of transition to adulthood model.
Right. So we're all in all of our areas. So that's part of the 12 to 17 and the YIP model that's exactly why we want to look at that. We're also working with NSIM. I forget what NSIM stands for up here, but we're also looking at that through another organization, an outside organization that's looking at those same types of things. So we're working very closely together with the NSIM project to be able to bridge that gap.
Thank you. And I know that I think last week you told us you guys only have one monitor for all the programs that we're funding. Is that correct?
That is correct.
That's unfortunate, but that leads me to another point that I think a lot of times people are requesting of you and your staff. How do they get in touch with you about the various programs that we're funding? And a lot of these programs, a major component of it is centered around recruitment, and they're all geographically based. So I don't think it would be to our advantage to have information out there for somebody who knows about a program that's available for young people and they live in Midtown, and the program we're talking about is in Southwest Little Rock. So can we remind folks that most of these programs are based on recruitment is one of the components of it.
It is. And so you can find our information easiestly on the website, which is littlerock.gov. Look under the city departments, of course, we're community programs, or you can always give us a call through either the City of Little Rock switchboard, or our direct number to our department is 399-3420.
Thank you. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Director Adcock, you're recognized, please.
Yes, Mr. Moore, I was going to ask if we are about due for a master youth plan report to the board, but Dana did cover that and said that she's working on it now. So
Yes,
thank
ma'am.
you.
When do you expect to have that ready, Dana?
Hopefully by February. I've got to get my information back from, we had someone from the outside working on that for us so that it would be an objective review, and hopefully by February I'll be able to make that.
You know, I think the board, and we've made this comment before, the great challenge is that making sure we're spending the money effectively on the youth that need it. And I think that's always been an issue that we've struggled with, is to make sure that the kids in the streets that we're coming in contact with are the ones that we're going to try and funnel into constructive opportunities that give them hope about themselves and hope for the future. So, Director Richardson, I appreciate what your comments are relative to making sure that we use that street team to try and use their intelligence to really try and make sure we've got some constructive programs. And I know our Commission on Youth and Families will work with that as well. So, thank you.
And I think you're right, man. Hopefully we've done this in the past, and I don't know if we're still doing this, but hopefully we've utilized or looked at demographic data in various parts of our community to determine where we're going to fund these programs and what type of programs we're going to fund. So we're still doing that.
Yes, sir, we're still doing that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, are there any other questions about the resolutions that we passed? If not, then we can move on to the grouped items. Madam Clerk, if you would read the grouped items along with the M1 ordinance that we added, please.
An ordinance to accept the CP&T Lawson annexation to add certain lands to the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes. An ordinance to amend the land use plan in the Chenal Planning District northeast of Rawling Road and Kirk Road intersection from the residential low density to office, and for the purposes. An ordinance to reclassify property located in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes. An ordinance to reclassify property located in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes. An ordinance to abolish and dissolve the Little Rock, Arkansas Heifer International Project Public Facilities Board, prescribing other matters relating thereto, to declare an emergency, and for the purposes. An ordinance to clarify that prevention, intervention, and treatment programs for youth can be provided in a manner that limits a specific program to one gender if it is determined by the Commission on Children, Youth, and Families that it is appropriate to do so, to declare an emergency, and for the purposes. First reading.
There's a motion and a second to suspend the rules and place these ordinances on second reading. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, say nay. Second reading, please.
An ordinance to accept the CP&T Lawson annexation to add certain lands to the city of Little Rock, Arkansas. An ordinance to amend the land use plan in the Chenal Planning District northeast of Rawling Road and Kirk Road intersection from residential low density to office. An ordinance to reclassify property located in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas. An ordinance to reclassify property located in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas. An ordinance to abolish and dissolve the Little Rock, Arkansas Heifer International Project Public Facilities Board, prescribing other matters relating thereto, to declare an emergency. An ordinance to clarify that prevention, intervention, and treatment programs for youth can be provided in a manner that limits a specific program to one gender if it is determined by the Commission on Children, Youth, and Families that it is appropriate to do so, to declare an emergency. Second reading.
There's a motion and a second to suspend the rules and place these ordinances on third and final reading. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Third and final reading, please.
An ordinance to accept the CP&T Lawson annexation to add certain lands to the city of Little Rock, Arkansas. An ordinance to amend the land use plan in the Chenal Planning District northeast of Rawling Road and Kirk Road intersection from residential low density to office. An ordinance to reclassify property located in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas. An ordinance to reclassify property located in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas. An ordinance to abolish and dissolve the Little Rock, Arkansas Heifer International Project Public Facilities Board, prescribing other matters relating thereto, to declare an emergency. An ordinance to clarify that prevention, intervention, and treatment programs for youth can be provided in a manner that limits a specific program to one gender if it is determined by the Commission on Children, Youth, and Families that it is appropriate to do so, to declare an emergency. Third and final reading.
Are there any questions on any of these ordinances? Hearing none, all in favor of the passage of the ordinances indicate by saying aye. Opposed, say nay. The ordinances have passed. And on the emergency clause on ordinance number 18, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. The emergency clause is also passed. All right, thank you. We
have an emergency clause on M1.
And M1 has an emergency clause as well. All in favor of the passage of the emergency clause on ordinance M1 indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. The emergency clause on ordinance M1 has also passed. All right, we can now move on to the item 19. It's a resolution. Madam Clerk, if you would please read the resolution.
A resolution to extend a contract with Little Rock Regional Chamber of Commerce in an amount not to exceed $300,000 to provide economic development consulting services and for other purposes.
All right. I've got one card on this matter, but I also have the chamber with me, and so let me recognize Jay Cheshire first, and then we'll move on to the citizen cards that we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, and...
excuse me for 1 second. Do you wish to speak now? Oh, okay. Go ahead, Jay.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and members of the Board of Directors. You're being handed a paper copy of the presentation that I want to talk about tonight. We've also brought it on PowerPoint so that our citizens at home can see that as well from the screen's perspective. And as James is finishing handing that out, I do want to also add my, I guess, not only congratulations, but hearty here for the work that Dana Doucette is doing. A lot of you probably aren't aware, but the NSEM project that she's talking about is the Network for Southern Economic Mobility that we've been in this process now for well over a year, have another year going, working with those disadvantaged youth all across our city and trying to help opportunities and pathways for economic mobility. The Chamber and others brought that to the city asking for your help. Dana and her team have really picked that up and run with it, and we as an organization outside and apart from the economic development work or contract have been staffing that and also providing resources, especially for travel, for some of the folks that are engaged with that. So we're excited about that. But I wanted to begin tonight to kind of give you a brief overview, not only of what we're doing and how we're doing it and the results, and then some information for next year. But I wanted to start with the approach to economic development, because sometimes this is something that's not always recognized. And Scott, if you don't mind, go to the next. There we go. So this gives you an overall idea of our approach to economic development and what makes up the pieces of that, because each one of these pieces are extremely important to a city's growth, a city's health, and the ability to attract new residents, and obviously with those new residents, new investment, new opportunity, and new tax dollars for the city itself, as well as to help this community grow and grow in a very strong way. If you'll go to the next slide, I wanted to give you an idea of what the chamber team that works on this process every day looks like. We'll go through some of these individually, but as you can see, and I have seated here behind me the members of our economic development team, so that you can actually put those picture faces with actual faces of folks in the crowd. And so now I want to go through some of these individual pieces where we can talk about the results. First is business expansion and retention. As you saw from the previous slide, Eddie Mraz is our director of doing this type of work. You can see from that information that there have been 112 company visits representing over 35,000 employees. 3 industry surveys were completed in 2018 with an additional 3 planned for 2019. Why is that important? We'll talk about that in a few minutes when it comes to looking for talent for companies that are in the expansion mode. You can see the specific areas that we focus on in terms of business expansion and retention from an attraction perspective, as well as trying to help these industries grow. You'll see the advanced manufacturing and distribution, healthcare, information technology, financial services, energy technologies, that should say energy as opposed to Entergy, even though our friends at Entergy would be very happy that that was a typo, and construction, because all of those are part of the economic development plan. And if you'll move to the business attraction side, I wanted to give you a brief overview of the results there. 49 total prospects. What does that mean? If you'll recall, in September of 2017, this program actually restarted from a funding standpoint. So the information that you're looking at represents a little over 12 months of actual marketing activity once we had the economic development contract back in place, the process up and running. So you can see the total prospects of those prospects, new location prospects, how many expansion, 43 prospect visits, which is a record. Interestingly enough, as of today, we've now had 8 prospect visits in December alone, with another one coming on Friday. I was quoted in the media last week of saying it was our busiest economic development week of the year. Actually, the week was the busiest we've had in 4 years. And so I think that speaks to the marketing that's going on and the interest that we're now receiving. You see the 17 marketing trips, which included site selection, site select tour conferences. So we talk about site selection and site consultants. That's what that refers to. Industry trade shows, obviously talking to companies within specific industries, and then trips to corporate headquarters and consultant offices. And why is that important? Just look no further than Dassault Falcon Jet. If you'll recall, it was that type of trip that actually led us to the opportunity for the latest Dassault Falcon Jet expansion. So whenever we're in an area of the country or of the world for that matter, if we have an existing company that's headquartered in that area, we pay attention to them, we go and call on them, we ask what we can do to help them, and in many opportunities in doing so, find out about projects that we wouldn't have known about otherwise, that give us an opportunity to actually work on those. And you see there at the very end, 15 projects completed for the year. So from a business attraction standpoint, along with our existing business retention and expansion perspective, a very a very robust year. If you move to the results area in small business growth and entrepreneurship, as you saw again on the previous slide, we have Brandon Campbell, who is the director of our work in that area. An amazing amount of activity in 2018 from small business growth and entrepreneurship. First of all, we graduated the third FinTech Accelerator cohort. Why is that important? Well, if you look at the bottom of that slide, 2 of those 3 companies actually came from this FinTech Accelerator through FIS, and we've had additional ones come before that. If you look at the next piece, why is that important? ICBA stands for the Independent Community Bankers of America. And so if you think about Bank of the Ozarks and First Security Bank and those types of major community banks, this is their national association. Because of the amazing success that we've had with the FIS work, they came to us and wanted to talk to us about the possibility of conducting an accelerator for them over a 3-year time frame. And so we announced the agreement between the Venture Center and the ICBA. So instead of having 10 companies from around the world sourced to come to Little Rock for a 3-month time frame and look at the possibility of moving here, that means in 2019, beginning in just a couple of weeks, we'll have our second FinTech Accelerator, which means we'll have 20 companies that are sourced from hundreds from around the world to come to Little Rock for that work. We've been working with Remix Ideas. Many of you know Benito in his pitch competition, especially focusing on the minority community and helping the minority community understand entrepreneurship tools that are available in the area. The thing that I think we may be the most, at least me personally, pleased with is the fact that in a little over a year of opening the first phase of the tech park, it is now completely full. And we're working on the second phase, the second expansion of that process now. So full occupancy with over 43 companies located now at the Little Rock Tech Park. Bond.ai, which is another one of the FIS FinTech companies that actually announced their move to Little Rock late last year. Finovate is one of the world's largest and most recognized FinTech events in the world. Bond.ai goes to New York to be a part of that process and was named Best in Show. The fact that they're headquartered in Little Rock and now doing some amazing things across the country and the world is pretty important, not only for what we're doing, but it shows that it's working. We show you the other FinTech company announcements that have happened this year. So from a business attraction, but especially from a small business growth and entrepreneurship, as we began this process several years ago with the creation of the Little Rock Tech Park, it's now coming to fruition. We're seeing real companies being created. We're seeing real companies being recruited and attracted to the area, and obviously some amazing jobs and high-paying jobs coming as a result of that. If we go to the next slide, it moves into some historical results. Because we think it's always important not only to take a look at the last 12 months, but in this case we've looked at the last 8 years so that you could see just from the city of Little Rock's perspective what the employment numbers were in 2009 or 8 years ago versus the end of 2017. And again, these are U.S. Census Bureau numbers with that total increase and the growth rate, employment growth from the perspective of the MSA as a total, so that you see what those job numbers are and that growth and that growth rate is. And then lastly, we only put on in our reports to you the projects that we work. So for example, on your consent agenda tonight was a UPS project, and it's a project by UPS that will possibly increase their employment over 950. They're working on that as we speak, but this initial investment is a $6.5 million investment in new equipment to hopefully allow them to. Many of you saw recently the change in the Sun Paper project that is the large Chinese project down in Arkadelphia. They've changed the product line that they're now planning to produce from what was going to be soft pulp type activity into liner board activity. And the reason why they used Director Compuris' work in trying to look at internet sales tax, the reason why they've changed that complete process is because of the amount of boxes, cardboard boxes now being utilized, obviously, to deliver things all across the country and the world. And so if it's a project that we have an incentive agreement on that we've actually directly worked, that's where you see our information and the jobs that we associate with that. So if you move to the next piece, in your contract, you talked about being a partner regionally, because we're marketing an area of over 1 million people as opposed to a city of just 200,000, simply so that we'll get larger projects to take a look at us. And that gives you an idea of some of the activities that's been engaged with at the regional level. We just finished in fact, last Friday was given the response from some work that DCI was brought in to do for us on regional branding and marketing, and also giving us a blueprint for what we should be doing going forward. You can see the 3-day immersion tour that they spent in Little Rock and the Metro Little Rock area, and how many folks they reached, and the work that they did in that. And if you go to the next slide, you'll look at something that I thought would be very interesting to you. So one of the things that we asked them to do was a media audit. A media audit of the Little Rock marketplace over an 18-month time frame. As you can see, they came and they were finished in August, so it went back 18 months to February of 2017. And what's interesting here is, first of all, 95 articles in national and regional media outlets sounds like a lot, but it's not. It's a low number. Over that 18-month time frame, we believe that number going forward should go up 20, 30, and 40%, and they've actually said the same thing. But the things that I wanted to point out here, you see the difference between what was regional and what was national, but go to the next circle over, you'll see that of all of those 95 articles and information being presented in the media at the regional and the national level, 70% was negative. 70% was negative. 30% of that was positive. You see some headlines on the other side that talks about some of the negatives and the positives. And if you go to the next slide, the reason why we asked DCI to do that work was, first of all, we wanted to see what others are seeing about our market. We had not been actually out in the marketing arena because of the contract issues over the previous 3.5 years. And so that's a great example of, if we're not out there pushing our message, then we're allowing someone else, and in this case the regional and the national media, to frame that message, which is why it's so important that we actually market, but that we market not only what's happening here, but the positive reasons for why folks should be here. We hosted a number of site selection consultants on a familiarization tour. You would think that that would be pretty basic, but unfortunately many of these site location consultants that we're trying to attract their attention to bring projects to our area have never been here. So if they're not aware of what it looks like, what we have available, obviously we can't, we aren't going to be competitive in projects because we'll never even have that opportunity. The good news from that, since that FAM tour happened last month, we actually are working a project from one of those site consultants that had never been here before. So that kind of talks about what they did while they were here in familiarizing themselves with the region. If you go to the next piece, workforce development and education, which Christy Barr on our team handles all of this. We wanted to use this example and the next example as some of the work that we do in workforce development and education. So Caterpillar was going to announce an expansion that we've been working on for quite some time. Their second expansion in a year. The second expansion included 250 new jobs in specific categories with specific talent needs. Up until July of this year, Caterpillar had been using a temp to hire process where you worked for a temp agency, you came in, and if they actually liked what you were doing over a period of time, then you became a direct hire. They recognized that they couldn't get the talent level and the numbers that they needed very quickly in a shorter period of time, so they came to us and said, okay, now that you helped us locate this, we have to find these 250 people. Our team sat down with 25 folks from the Caterpillar group across the United States and devised a plan that we felt like would give them the opportunity to be successful in reaching not only within Little Rock, but also within our region, opportunities and folks that were interested in those opportunities at specific job type levels and pay. You can see from that, we did multiple information sessions around Little Rock and around the region, and within 13 days at a hiring event on a Saturday morning at 7:30 a.m., I might add, over 550 folks were standing in line to talk to Caterpillar about those 250 jobs. Well, very successful. Lots of media activity, digital, radio, and otherwise. And what would happen, or what would you expect to happen in that situation? My phone started ringing from other advanced manufacturers, saying, they're going to hire away our best people. What are you going to do for us? So we put together, as you can see, a group of 14 that included Caterpillar to come back and review the process that we'd used for them, working with Pulaski Tech, working with all of our education areas and opportunities, that both from Goodwill to traditional education, to look at a way of from a 200 job per opportunity, I should say, how we could take these 14 companies and do something similar so that they would have similar results. Thankfully, as you can see at the end, the hiring event was held on Halloween Day. Nobody came in costume, thankfully. Over 613 folks showed up that day for those 200 positions. So what does that tell us? That tells us that there's a significant number of underemployment in our marketplace. People looking for better opportunities, for better wages, which is healthy. Because as folks move up in that process, you have new people who come in that are younger, less experienced, that take those places and also have the opportunity to move up. So even at a 3% unemployment rate, we were able to, in a few short weeks, attract over 1,200 folks to come and look at specific job opportunities in our marketplace. If you go to the plan for 2019, so I wanted to give you some specific numbers because you're going to see a budget for this. Our goal for business retention and expansion visits with Eddie and his team to have 180 for 2019, with Brandon and his team, 200 small business visits. Obviously, our goal for 2019 is to directly work to create 1,000 new jobs, and also have 18 marketing/existing company headquarter trips as part of our marketing plan. You see our key initiatives there. I don't have time tonight to go into some of the work that we're doing with our pre-K through 12 alignment, not only in Little Rock and the Pulaski County school districts, but in the school districts throughout Pulaski County itself. Increased small business and business retention outreach work. One of the things that we all have to work on, and this is really important that Little Rock leads in this from the region's perspective, we've got to create product. Brian Day and the Port Authority Board, along with Ben and our team, are doing a fantastic job in trying to get a VOR cone moved so that we can take the new property that has been purchased because of the sales tax money from 2011, so that we can create new product opportunity and shovel-ready development opportunities at the port. That's just a piece of it. We need to do even more. We need to talk about distribution and logistics. That doesn't work at the port because it's not the highest and best use for that property. Phase 2 of the Little Rock Tech Park expansion is going to be something that we're going to have to roll up our sleeves and take a look at. How are we going to invest as a community in these things that drive job development? So if you look at the following page and open that up, unfortunately, I'm not sure that's going to work on there. There it is. Okay. So if you go to your next page, and now it's up on the screen, wanted to give you an overview, not only from the Little Rock contract dollars perspective, because I tried to focus on that as we went through the process of the actual report, but I wanted you to see from a total economic development budget perspective. Again, this is ED only, has nothing to do with chamber operations. You can see private investment for 2019 is expected to be $650,000. You see the Little Rock's contract, but you see us separating that 200 and 100, and the reason for that is the contract calls for specific regional marketing and participation, which is why you see 100,000 of the city's contract listed under our regional economic development area. You see the work in the contract that we've had in place with the port to do specific work for them, both business retention, expansion, and attraction wise. And then below that you see our regional partners on the MLRA side and what they're contributing to this area. So the $300,000 city contract actually becomes $1.1+ million in terms of revenue to fund economic development work. And if you go to the next page, you'll see what those proposed expense levels are. We have a significant database. So EMSI is labor analytics work, labor analytics database that we use with all of our prospects, where they're asking specifically with specific SOC codes what we have available in the marketplace, what we have available coming out of our education institutions. Catalyst is the real estate piece that's used to show our buildings and sites on the website to the outside world. You see what we're planning on from a digital marketing perspective, hosting prospects, the 43 prospects that you saw on this on the earlier page in the report. Our lead generation, that's a contract where we actually are working with an international company on lead generation specifically to the industry sectors that we're trying to attract. So it's not only what our marketing is doing, but what they can do to help bring us prospects. Significant piece of that budget, obviously, is what I call the pure marketing and prospect development, and that's everything from trade shows to print ads and things of that nature. You see the MLRA regional website. That has to be completely updated because it has not been really touched much at all in the last 4 years because of the economic development contract situation. So that work will get underway in early January. And then you see some of the other activities from the minority business and entrepreneurial development activity and in Brandon's work. Operating expenses, obviously things that you would expect from professional fees and payroll taxes and basically what salaries are and insurance and all of those stuff. So you can see from an overall economic development budget what we have presented to our board and what we're presenting to you and to our regional partners as our total 2019 economic development budget, so that you see that in total. So that was a long, quick way for me going through a lot of information that probably has created questions. But one of the things that I did also want to point out on the small business side, we worked to help bring, and the mayor was a big part of this, help bring FedEx to Southwest Little Rock. We worked with all of you in bringing Bass Pro to Southwest Little Rock. One of the things, though, that the Southwest Little Rock Business Group wanted to do was to have, much like the Downtown Little Rock Partnership, have a committee put together that focused strictly on opportunities and growth and economic mobility in the southwest part of our city. So we have helped create the Southwest Little Rock Business Alliance. It's going to be a partnership of businesses and individuals that want to be a part of that in the area. I was actually getting information today. They're now going out and talking to people, they being folks like our Arkansas Electric Co-op, which Dwayne and JD and that team is a big part of helping create this. Miguel Lopez, who used to work for us, who is now with the bank, is a big part of helping create that. So one of the new things that we're literally working on as we speak, that you'll see the formation and activity from beginning in 2019, is the Southwest Little Rock Business Alliance, which will also operate separate from this economic development contract as part of a Little Rock Chamber Committee. So we're staffing that as well as we're trying to help all areas of our city grow. With that, Mayor, I'll try to answer any questions anyone has.
Thank you, Mr. Cheshire. Okay, board members, any questions? I thought I saw somebody. Yes, Director Wright, go ahead, please.
Yes, Jay, you mentioned Southwest Little Rock Alliance, and that's wonderful. But I have a shopping center that is, my restaurants are doing a booming business, but I do have a lot of open retail space, and I interact with them quite a bit, and I've talked to David Elrod extensively, and I know brick and mortar stores are in trouble all across the country, but I would like to see an effort from you all to assist him in getting those storefronts filled.
That's an area that Brandon will be focused on as well, because it's not only working with existing small businesses, but one of the things that we're working on at the moment is creating small business opportunities around the city so that people that are interested in starting a small business can have staff resources from us, from the SBA and other places to help grow businesses to be able to take that type of space and hopefully get it filled. So yes, we will certainly do that.
We do have one new business in the last 6 months. I believe it's called Spec Ops.
Yes.
Where they do the gaming. So that's been doing really well, but we just have too many empty storefronts in there. As I said, the
Amen.
restaurants are booming, but we need to get those storefronts filled. I appreciate that.
Yes,
Thank you.
ma'am.
Okay, Director Wyrick.
Thank you. Jay, you mentioned a little bit about the Southwest Business Alliance. Can you elaborate on that a little bit and tell us where we are at this point? We've heard about it for maybe a year. And so at what point are we? And this 300,000, is any of that going to the Southwest Business Alliance, or is that a separate entity from the chamber?
So let me, first of all, it is a committee of the chamber. Let me back up and tell you where it is.
Okay.
We went through an extended process with the folks that are trying to create the alliance, Dwayne and again JD and his group. John Riggs was a big part of that, as well as others. And part of the time lag has been creating a document that everybody agrees is the governing document, so to speak, of that committee going forward. All of that's now been done, and they are actively out talking to people about the formation of the alliance and asking people to become members of the alliance, so that what effectively will be a first organizational meeting will take place pretty early in 2019 from those folks that are interested and those folks that have already. I had 7 people today literally email us with their membership application to be a part of the Southwest Business Alliance. So the organizational meeting will obviously create the governance of the committee, who's going to chair it, who's going to be this, who's going to be that, but also start the process of what are we going to do? What is the Alliance going to do to focus on to make Southwest Little Rock not only a better place for business, but a better place to live? The second question about the economic development contract. So we don't, when we do our marketing, or when I have Brandon or Eddie or whomever on the team, or Christy, when they're doing their work, it's not allocated, so to speak, to specific wards of the city. And we're gonna use this to market X and this to market Y. It gives us the opportunity to use the budget where needed to market what is needed at that moment in time. And the FedEx project is a great example of that. At the time we came before you, we really didn't know that FedEx was looking at that. At this place for that type of investment. We ended up having to spend some of that money, obviously, for work to locate that in Southwest Little Rock. So some of this funding is flexible to be able to utilize for whatever the need is in whatever area of the city. Some of it is obviously set with the contracts and the trade shows and things of that nature. So that's the way we have approached it. And if there's something that you want us to focus on, just as Director Wright talked about from the west central area of our city, we'll be happy to do so as well.
So it's a subcommittee of the chamber.
It's a committee established under the Chamber of Commerce only because it was going to be the best way to get the group up and functioning as quickly as possible. There may come a time in the future where they, like the Downtown Partnership, become their own entity. But we literally were trying to hit the ground running as quickly as possible to have a group of people focused on that area of the city and what we can do to help it.
Okay, so who from the chamber is working with the Southwest Alliance?
So Christy Barr has been the primary person from the word go. Eddie is now taking on some of those responsibilities. Brandon's taking on some of those responsibilities. Miguel Lopez, who I said earlier used to be with the chamber, was also spearheading that, and we wouldn't let him go. So even though he got a better opportunity from a job standpoint, he literally is still a leader in that process as well.
He's around quite a bit in Southwest. Okay, that's what I need to know. Thank you.
Director Peck is next, and then Director Wright.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be very brief, Jay. Sort of along the line of Doris and BJ's question, West Village, has the chamber been involved in any of those projects? I know finally there's somebody going in where Kmart is and Whole Foods. A lot of movement, new, real vibrant merchants association. Have you all been working on that area?
Yes, in fact, we also helped create a group for the I'm trying to think of the name of the Pleasant Valley. I'm trying to think of the official name.
Well, it was Villages at Pleasant Valley. Now it's called West Village.
And that we actually helped, and it came from a meeting that we had with some of the retailers in that area who were wanting to, again, like the Southwest Little Rock Business Alliance, get a group of people in that geographic area together to work. We actually had Jeff Yates engaged in the early process of that. So yes, we are working that process as well. It's not as formalized as the Southwest group, but they didn't want to go that route. They wanted to kind of they wanted to walk before they ran, so to speak. And so that has been a focus of ours. As you guys know, Arkansas does not incent retail. It's just something that the state, from a constitutional perspective, can't do. And so when we talk about retail, we talk about destination retail, which was Bass Pro was a good example of that. But one of the things from the entrepreneurial piece of this, and especially with what Benito is doing with Remix Ideas, is trying to find lifestyle entrepreneurs to create new businesses, to go into these empty spaces, number one. Number two, work with and support those folks who are struggling at the moment that are already there, because oftentimes they don't know about resources that we do, which goes back to why we're looking at moving on a consistent basis to have people operating out of a building in different parts of the community on a regular basis to be able to talk to folks in that area about resources that are available to help them.
Thank you.
Director Wright.
Yes. Jay, have you had any interest expressed from any of the businesses in West Central area about an alliance, having a committee or?
I have not. I don't know that if it's. I don't know that there's been an opportunity for a group of people to come together and talk about that. We can certainly work on that, but up until now, I have not.
Okay. Would you let me know if they're interested in doing that, and then we can. Because like I said, our restaurants are doing extremely well, but it just seemed like the retail is just lagging.
And that unfortunately holds true, as you said earlier. That's an issue across the country.
Yeah.
And so what you're seeing are traditional retail, brick and mortar, looking at becoming multi-use and mixed-use type of activities. And so I think that's something we also need to look at as we talk about, as we talk about product development. That can be part of the product development process. How do we reuse existing buildings, maybe in different ways than we've done before?
I'd like to be a part of that conversation because I know with the internet sales continuing, we may not be able to fill those storefronts, and I do know that we need to do something to help.
Well, and to that point, because I think this is important to the work that Brandon. They're all important. I don't have favorites. They're all great folks. But Brandon's work on the Small Business Saturday activity, and I don't know if you saw any of that, whether it was on television or digital or what have you. I think that's something that we, from a Little Rock perspective, need to continue to focus on even more, because in the old days, so to speak, and that's probably 15 or 20 years ago only, people came to Little Rock for shopping, because in many cases that was the only place they could shop in that type of store. Well, today those big box stores are not only everywhere, but they're going away. And so whatever we can do to help create small destination retail opportunities, boutique stores, to give people a reason to come to that specific store in that specific area because it's the only option, or maybe not the only option, but one of few options in the entire area, then I think that's an opportunity that we have to make those types of spaces and places sustainable, as opposed to seeing folks go into business and it not work and then go out of business, because that cycle also becomes detrimental over time.
I agree, and I understand about the chains and all that, so I like that, the specialty. Because I was asking about a Charming Charlie's. Next thing I know, oh, they're bankrupt. So, anyway, thank you.
Okay, we have one card. Thank you, Mr. Cheshire. We have one card that wishes to speak against this particular resolution. Let me call on Mr. Russ Raycott, please.
Thank you, Mayor. On February the 20th, I addressed the board on this same issue. I'm not going to give you a repeat of that speech, but there are some points that are very salient tonight. The Chamber is a registered lobby organization. They have a political action committee affiliated with them, and I know that the mayor said that they don't, but I have about 20 hours of research here, and there will be a post on Bad City of Little Rock blog tomorrow that has all these documents showing state legislators, candidates for mayor who confirm that the Progress PAC is the chamber PAC, and you know, you give public funds to a registered lobby group that has in turn, that Progress PAC has given money to every member of this board except for Irma Hendricks. They gave to Vice Mayor Webb when she was a state representative. Mr. Fortson, once upon a time, was an officer in Progress PAC. You know, that just stinks. It looks corrupt. Citizens watching this tonight, citizens who will be reading this in my blog tomorrow, you know, they wonder, why is our public money going to pay a lobby group that part of their mission statement on their forms, on the documents that will be published, state that they target municipal governments like you guys. They want to have your ear and pay for that. And like Max Brantley and myself have pointed out, the money that comes into the chamber is not from donations of I think I had maybe 5 or 6 donations from 2000 to now that you can count on one hand that are by individuals. Most of them come in, and what I like to use in the term in the old banking industry of structuring. All these hundreds of thousands of dollars of donations come into the PAC under the $500 threshold, so we don't know where that money comes from. And that lack of transparency is concerning to us. Now, tonight we saw some figures up here that kind of break down some transparency on that, and I'm glad that he put those out there. But, you know, Matt Campbell, attorney and a blogger, and myself have FOI'd the city and the chamber, which they've refused to provide information to us about how this money is spent. And I think people want to know how that money's spent. Is it coming in forms of donations to you guys? Because I do have documents where the chamber has made donations to PACs. So these are just questions that need to be answered. We need to have an accounting for how our money's spent, and we saw that tonight. There's $573,000 of that money that goes to pay for salaries and benefits. These are the same people who fought or supported the takeover of the Little Rock Public Schools by the state. They're the same bunch that backs the Walton charter schools that are taking the students out of our city. And if you think the schools aren't lacking, there are only 4,000 white students in all of Little Rock Public Schools. 4,000. And I guarantee you they're all in charter or private schools. Now, we've seen on here that they use this economic development in a 12-county area. Those are 11 counties that compete with the city of Little Rock for residents, for business, and for commerce. What's the breakdown of contributions from those other cities, and what criteria is used to determine the amount? If I'd been elected to the board, that's one question I would have asked tonight. And what another one is, when they was talking about the Southwest area, what research do they use to determine need? And I want to mention that he talked about Bass Pro coming into Little Rock. Well, I seem to remember Bass Pro wanted to go into North Little Rock, but they ran afoul of a water project that affected ducks and things like that, and they couldn't get the necessary permits, and it wasn't worth all the money for them, so they moved to Southwest Little Rock. Now, another thing that we have to look at with this is, if this is for economic development, it's kind of like, you know, you need to help yourself before you go help everybody else. We've got an area, that 12th Street corridor, that we have a police station, but they don't want to call it police station, and the chiefs have already left, that there's half of that building was set up for retail space. And one of the last things our former chief said was that the businesses didn't want to come in there because of the crime in the area. $300,000 would go a long way to helping that particular corridor of the city. There's no grocery stores, there's no laundromats, and there's other parts of the city as well. You have Southwest, you have out in West Little Rock, in the John Barrow, Shackelford areas, Bowman areas out there. And I think that there's a better use for some of this money. I was talking about what was going on in downtown. Well, we know just this last weekend we had a shooting, and luckily it wasn't on the level of what we had at the Power Ultra Lounge. But you know, again, money could be used for projects and these were teenagers. Money could be used for mentoring programs, for programs like those that Director Richardson used to run and others in the city to help these youth. And that's what's going to change the opinion of Little Rock. You know, he talked about the bad news about Little Rock. Well, the bad news is because of our crimes in schools. We should be putting money into that. We're not going to be able to economically develop out crime, like we can't police the crime away, and we can't economically develop our schools. I just think that we have a better use for this money, and that this board should probably wait and defer this till next year when we have a new mayor who has ideas about the mayor's position and the direction of the city and the funds, and let that go. There's one other thing. This the chamber is heavily affiliated with the Downtown Partnership, and you don't have to go any further than Google to see that with the phone numbers, just like with their PACs and things. And they a lot of this money that comes into the downtown area is to a detriment of some of the other areas, just, you know, like the Southwest. Anything that's on the other side of that concrete gulch, which is called 630, or east of I-30, they don't get development dollars. And these areas like that, we need to invest in, and it's because the chamber's not going to do it. It's not sexy, and it's not cool, and it's not downtown. All these kiosks that the city has put in, the advertising that's on that is not for restaurants out in Ward 6. It's for restaurants that are downtown. And when the visitors come into town, they don't get to see anything other than what's downtown. And again, with the crime that we have downtown, the Power Ultra Lounge, the shooting that was at the vintage clothing store that had an illegal event center operating there, we need to look at better uses of our money, the taxpayers' money, and you guys are our financial stewards, and you need to exercise that option and require transparency if you do this. Require accounting for how the funds are spent, and don't fund our competition in these other cities for development dollars. And thank you for your time.
Director Campiris.
Well, I have to take a slightly opposite view of life. If you're going to try to get large firms to look at us, and you advertise that you're a town of 200,000, it doesn't bring big people. Cooperation is the only way that we can make this region better. And that money is well spent. It doesn't really matter if there's a location in North Little Rock in the end, because those people come to Little Rock, they spend money here, they live in the region, they live in all of these different areas, and it's an opportunity where all boats are risen when economic development occurs in this area. So it is very, in my opinion, and we'll just differ on this, short-sighted to think that we need to not spend money to try to make this an economically more viable place. The money that we spend on these enterprises are what are our lifeline now and in the future. And I would urge us to pass this, move on with it, and I'll call the question.
All right, the question's been called. I do have other people who wish to speak, and I was going to give the Mr. Cheshire an opportunity to clarify some of these issues that were brought into question. Do you wish to hold, or do you?
Move on.
All right, the question's been called. All in favor of calling the question, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. The question's been called. There's one nay vote on the calling the question. Is that right? Two. Two. All right, let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's 7-2. So the calling the question passed. All in favor of there's a motion to pass the resolution. All in favor indicate by, and a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Nay. And the resolution has passed. 7-2 and 1 present. All right. Thank you very much. I know that the chamber would, from my understanding, challenge quite a few of the things that were made as conclusions in that comment, and
That's fine.
we'll leave that to somebody else to report on. Yes. Director Adcock, you were next. Do you have anything at this point? Okay, Director Richardson.
Yeah, I just wanted to correct you. I think it was 711 instead of 721. I think you made the point of
711.
711 instead of 721.
Very good.
Thank you.
Director Wright.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Moore, I would like my kiosk for the community center. I did submit a request for that. I gave you the price, and I thought it was quite reasonable. And we can advertise some things and amenities in the area. As you know, we are a sports complex. We have boxing now. That was a big event. People came from all over the region. We can market ourselves as a sports, providing sports in the area. And that'll be economic development for our hotels, our restaurants, when people come up and stay. So I really would like that kiosk.
And Director Wright, they will be adding some, but it's a progress process. So as we talked about before, certainly that your comments before did not go unnoticed by the company. It's just a matter they got to get the 15 in or the 14 in that they've got, and then they'll be looking to add more of those as time goes on. So
well, I think it would be beneficial to the overall plan that we have. So I'd like that to be something that's on Mr. Moore's radar. Thank you.
all right, Director Wyrick.
Thank
Go
you,
ahead.
Mayor. I just wanted to let Jay know that I'm very interested in the Southwest Alliance and the progress that I'm hoping that they're making, and I would like that they keep the community in the loop as they move forward. There's a lot of interest in the possibilities of the businesses coming together and making a difference in the Southwest. So just keep me in the loop. I know Joan wants to be in the loop. So that's my message to you. Thank you.
Director Richardson.
Yes, Mayor, this may be a slightly different question. I know a couple of weeks ago I think Jay made reference to our tech park. I think a couple of weeks ago we approved $2 or $3 million for the tech park, and I know we're bound to provide that financing, and I think via the sales tax. Tommy shaking his head no, but there was a commitment to it. And I think when the question came up, I asked whether or not this was for property acquisition or not, and I think both you and Bruce made reference to us having a report from them, and I heard Jay say something to the effect that they're fully operational right now, and whether or not that $2 to $3 million we'd approved 2 weeks ago, whether or not this was additional property acquisition or for staffing or operations, or what was it? This could preempt us having you come back and do a report.
That's a great question, and Brent Birch, our executive director, does need to come because you guys need to have a full report. So because of the way the sales tax was structured, if you recall, it was over a 10-year time frame that it would be collected. And so what the Tech Park Authority Board did was to actually create a financing package so that we could buy that property all in one piece, number one, and do the renovation for the first two buildings that are now up and fully operational, and oh, by the way, full. So that funding is actually going to repay that debt as opposed to purchase additional property as we go now through the process of what the second phase is going to look like.
Got you. Thank you.
And all the property was purchased.
Correct. Correct.
All right. Thank you. And we're in year 7 of that sales tax, Bruce, Mayor.
Excuse me?
We're in year 7 of that sales tax. I think Jay said it was over a 10-year period, so we're in year 7.
Started in 2012.
Oh, so year 6, but it was passed in
So
2011.
this is the 7th year.
This is year 7.
Started,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, thanks, Jay. And I agree, we might need to have that report just to make sure everybody up here has some kind of clarity with respect to how we're moving forward and progress that you provided tonight.
And I would highly encourage it. I know that Brent has visited with Bruce about some other things, because I think it's important not only for you but for the citizens of Little
Sure.
Rock to see the progress.
I agree. Thank you.
Director Wright, you're next, please.
Jay, which one of your staff or the staff of the chamber is working on the small business entrepreneurship? Brandon. Okay. I would really, really like to engage with him because I'm looking at entrepreneurship being a way for young people to have their own jobs, and I'd like to use our community center to host some workshops on entrepreneurship and getting them information. And if they could put his name with a face, meet him, talk to him. If people have ideas that they want to implement, that may be an opportunity for them to get involved with downtown. And a lot of information doesn't filter out. Okay, a lot of people don't have a clue what the tech park does, but it could be a way to build up these specialty stores that you were talking about for our shopping center, and this may be something that we could expand on. I'd also like to know if we can engage LRCVB in helping to promote the Shackelford Crossings area and the hotels and restaurants in that area, because I've heard from some of them that they don't feel that they get proper representation for the money that they have to, the tax they have to pay.
So that you know, one of the reasons why we hired Mr. Campbell was not only because of he's a wonderful asset and resource, but he's an entrepreneur himself.
Good.
So he has created and run successfully companies on his own. And I think it's important when you're in that position and you're talking to people about ways to do this, that you understand not how it's taught, you understand how it's done because you've done it yourself.
Yes.
So Brandon,
I'd appreciate
we'll
that.
work with you.
Thank you.
Director Hancock.
Yes, Mayor, it's 10 minutes to 8 now, and the next 2 or 3 items are going to take quite a while. Could we go ahead, please, and have our break?
Are you making a motion
Yes, sir.
for a recess of how long?
15 minutes.
All right, there's a motion. Is there a second? Second. A motion and a second to recess for 15 minutes. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Roll call request. Madam Clerk.
Director Wyrick? Director Campuris? Director Fortson. Director Adcock. Director Hendricks. Director Richardson. Director Peck. Director Hines. Director Wright. Vice Mayor Webb. 6 to 3 to 1.
Okay, we'll be in recess
No,
for,
6 to 3. Sorry.
we'll be in recess for 15 minutes. Thank you. All right, our recess is over. We're back in session. And we can now move on. Director Hines, you had your light on. So I will call on you next.
Yes, Mayor, before we need to take a break, I wanted to point out and remind my fellow board members that that the tech park was originally targeted for the 12th Street corridor, and the community there decided that they did not want it there, and it was moved. So,
Director Richardson.
Yeah, Mayor, point of clarification, it wasn't that the community didn't want it there. It was a process that they're going to use to acquire the property. I think they wanted to utilize eminent domain to acquire the property, and I think that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. Unlike what the library system did with the Children's Interactive Library, they partnered with the community to acquire those properties. So the tech park, although they wanted to be there, and I think the people wanted it there as well, lands, it was the method they were going to use to acquire the property, eminent domain, which caused the conflict and the confusion, and I think the reluctance to have it in that area.
All right. We can now move on to ordinance number 20. And we've had 2 readings of the ordinance. Madam Clerk, if you would, 3rd reading, please.
An ordinance to provide for and to adopt the 2019 budget for the City of Little Rock, Arkansas for the period beginning January 1st, 2019 and ending December 31st, 2019, to appropriate resources and uses for every expenditure item and fund, to declare an emergency and for other purposes. 3rd and final reading.
Okay. Are there any questions? Any questions? Any comments? Hearing none, all in favor of the passage of the 2019 budget indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. The ordinance has passed, and on the emergency clause, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. The emergency clause is also passed. All right, we can now move on to ordinance number 21. And I'll turn the gavel over to our Vice Mayor. We've had 1 reading of that ordinance.
Okay,
Second reading.
right. Madam Clerk, we are on the second
Uh-huh.
reading, and so if you would read the ordinance for the second time.
An ordinance to establish parameters for the retirement benefits for the mayor of the City of Little Rock, Arkansas, to provide spousal benefits for the widow of a Little Rock mayor, to declare an emergency and for other purposes. 2nd reading.
There's a motion and a second to suspend the rules and place on 3rd reading. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Madam Clerk, will you read the ordinance for the 3rd time?
An ordinance to establish parameters for the retirement benefits for the mayor of the City of Little Rock, Arkansas, to provide spousal benefits for the widow of a Little Rock mayor, to declare an emergency. 3rd and final reading.
Thank you. Yes, Director Adcock.
Mr. Carpenter, I would like for you to start at the beginning and explain this, covering all areas of this, to include the cost of the citizens of Little Rock at this time in the future for this to pass, please.
Director Adcock, the state law mandates that if a person has served as mayor, whether in a salaried or unsalaried position, for a period of 10 years, upon reaching the age of 60, then they are entitled to a half-salary retirement or at least a minimum of $250. This statute applies to Mayor Stodola. In 2007, the board referred to the people an ordinance that gave the mayor substantial powers, and the people voted it in. And the statutes that allowed that said that the mayor would receive salary and benefits comparable to the highest paid municipal official. There were actually two statutes that became effective a day apart, and the second one was more exacting, saying a highest paid municipal employee or official with similar executive powers as that granted to the mayor. And I know that people like to say that the airport and Central Arkansas Water and other places may apply to that, but they don't. And the reason they don't, in my mind, is twofold. First, they don't have a sewer department at the airport. They don't have a fire department. They don't have a police department. They don't pick up trash, and they don't do any planning. It's all done through the city. And then Central Arkansas Water is a multi-city organization approved through an interlocal agreement. So the only person that can apply to is essentially the city manager. He is a city official with similar executive authority. That being the case, then, it says that the mayor will have a similar retirement plan to that of our city manager. In 2007, after that went into effect, a private insurance plan was purchased or begun for, not insurance, but retirement plan was begun for Mayor Stodola, in which he made contributions which were matched by city contributions in the same manner that the city manager's contributions were matched. And Mr. Carrera is here, but as I remember, there are two amounts in that retirement account, approximately $400,000 that represent the cumulative benefits from the city, and I think it's $173,000 that represent the contributions from Mayor Stodola. It was reviewed internally and determined that it would make sense to administer Mayor Stodola's retirement plan through the defined benefit plan this board adopted in 2014. The ordinance is written not only to accomplish that, but to also declare that this defined benefit plan for an elected mayor of Little Rock is a comparable benefit for somebody in the position of mayor. So this will apply not only to Mayor Stodola, but to all future mayors. It will require an amendment of the plan documents that were adopted in 2014 or approved in 2014 to set up a sub-chapter, and I don't know if that means a lot of pages or just a few paragraphs, but that's what it's called, a sub-chapter for the position of mayor. That sub-chapter, I've suggested in conversations with Mr. Carrera, really needs to have two parts. One is for basically all mayors, but the second one is going to be for the unusual situation where a mayor may have served 20 years, in which case they get the half-salary retirement, or whether they have served 10 years and reached the age of 60, which applies to Mayor Stodola, and they would get the half-salary retirement. That plan already allows for a COLA provision. In that plan, as I understand how it would work, sometime in May or June of the year, a report will be made as to whether or not the earnings on the plan met a certain target trigger that deals with the Consumer Price Index. And if it did, then a COLA of up to 5%, it doesn't have to be 5, it can be 1, it can be 3, whatever, will be awarded. This ordinance makes that applicable to the mayor. The reason it does is because the state statute allows for the 60-10 statute, 10 years as mayor, 60 years old. That statute allows for a COLA at the option of the board, but if it's going to make more sense to administer it through the defined benefit plan, and it already provides for a COLA, then this ordinance makes the COLA of the defined benefit plan applicable to any mayor. The second aspect of that is that there is a permissive, under the 6010 statute, spousal benefit that would be 1/2 of the mayor's retirement benefit at the time the mayor dies, or if the mayor dies in office at the time that the mayor was entitled to, would have been entitled to on the date he died in office. There are different options for spousal benefits under the defined benefit plan. This will allow the mayor to trigger them, and it will allow him to take advantage of whichever one he wishes to do so, the same as any other employee within the city. The difference between the defined benefit plan and the 6010 statute, as I call it, is that the 6010 statute mandates the half-salary retirement, and it talks about half of the spousal benefit for the surviving spouse of a mayor. And by the way, it's not just the surviving spouse. The spouse has had to be the spouse of the retired mayor for at least 10 years before they're eligible for the benefits. If they remarry, then they lose eligibility for such benefits. So this is to bring all of that into line, to make these things available to it. What that does on the very front end is it's going to entitle Mayor Stoda under the defined benefit plan to an amount that he wouldn't be entitled to had he just been making contributions to that plan for 12 years. But that was taken out of the board's discretion. I mean, the 6010 plan, you don't have a choice. It's a half-salary retirement. So,
let me interrupt you there. I have a question. You keep referring to that. But in the beginning, you said that the 6010 plan was half of the salary or $250.
Because it applies to salaried and unsalaried mayors within the state. So a mayor that didn't have a salary would not get half of a salary. They would get $250.
Okay.
That's a very good question. So if Mayor Stola were not an elected official and retired December the 31st, then he would be allowed to a certain amount under our retirement plan, but it wouldn't be equal to half of his salary. Now, what will happen if this is passed is that the $400,000 that the city has put into the mayor's retirement program since 2007 will be transferred to this retirement plan. And I really kind of need to leave this over to Mr. Carrera at that point, because actuaries figure these things out. But when you ask me the question of how much is it going to cost, in a worst case scenario, if Mayor Stola dropped dead January the 1st and his wife dropped dead January the 2nd, it wouldn't cost you anything because you've gotten $400,000 and you haven't paid anything out. At the point at which the $400,000 has been spent, then it's going to have a cost, and that's where they have anticipated that based upon the life expectancy set forth in the 2014 plan of $800,000 over a period of time would be the maximum cost. And there are different ways that can be paid, as I understand it. Well, I'm going to let Mr. Carrera talk about how that exactly is going to be done. But that's essentially what the situation is.
Okay, I've got 2 or 3 more questions on this. You said that we have contributed $400,000.
That's the value, as I understand it, of the contributions, matching contributions
Okay,
made.
the other day there was a mention that part of that the mayor was going to take out in cash, and then he was going to put the rest of it into this other plan. Is that correct?
I don't know that. What I've done is draft an ordinance. See, I was brought in sort of late to draft the ordinance to make what was decided possible.
Okay, in the form that you gave us a while ago, which does not have all the information I requested earlier today, there is $1 million life insurance policy. Is that paid up life insurance?
I think it's a term policy. Ms. Witherell's here. I did find this out late this afternoon, and that is the insurance benefit for the life policies of the city are determined so many pennies per amount of coverage per number of years.
Okay, and in that, if I'm not mistaken, I was told that the mayor only had a $500,000 and another policy was going to have to be taken for the other $500,000. and yet the city never did receive a copy of that policy, but you paid the mayor how much money for that policy that we never received a copy of?
I didn't pay the mayor anything. In 2007, I received a telephone call from Mr. Flegel saying that we could cover $500,000, but there were some issues that made it impossible to cover the $1 million policy. Ms. Witherill looked at that today, and we have talked, and she looked at it yesterday. I mean, we've been talking the last 2 days. And what she had said essentially is that as we have gone through insurance carriers, when we've gotten to the situation we're in now, where we just pay so much for a total amount of insurance for city employees based upon their coverage and their age and such, that we haven't had to purchase a second policy for the mayor. And then I was told there is no actual policy that we pick up and show. It's just that his name is listed, my name is listed because I'm in the defined benefit plan. Ms. Witherall's name is listed someplace, and then the amount of the benefit that we receive determines the cost of that benefit to the city.
So if somebody dies, where does the money come from? If we don't have insurance, if we're self-insured on life insurance?
No, it's a policy, and the money would come from the insurance company.
So the mayor has not received any money for this other $500,000?
We can't determine if something was done the first year or two, but it's been determined that at least in the last few years, the carriers have been picking up the life insurance for everybody within the city.
Okay.
In one policy. I mean, we've got one policy for city employees on life insurance, and that covers all of us now.
So there's no life insurance the day that he leaves here?
No,
for
he's
the
not an
city of Little
employee
Rock.
anymore.
Okay, there's 3 of us on this board that was here in 2007. That was a very interesting year. Lots of us was out, Myra Jones and I was out at the Capitol all the time doing land bank. But the best I can remember, and Jean and BJ might not remember it like this, but the going out to the Capitol and changing the information on the mayor was not a city initiative.
No, I don't think it was.
Okay. And at what time did we find out about it?
The acts were passed on back-to-back days. There was a Senate Act and a House Act, and they were passed on back-to-back days. And I think it was March, and they were signed into law then.
Okay. And we wasn't part of any of that, the city of Little Rock?
There wasn't any discussion that I remember on the part of the board, no, ma'am.
No. And so then we had the election.
Yes, ma'am.
Which was called for by what was passed out the legislature.
Right. An ordinance from this board put the questions on the ballot, and that was referred to the people, and the election was held. That ordinance was passed on June the 12th of 2007, and I think the election was in August.
Because here is 2018. I'm still finding out some things that I didn't know was in that law out there. And one last question for you right now. We have a lawsuit by 3 judges.
Yes, ma'am.
Against us. Does this in any way impact negative or positive on that lawsuit?
No, ma'am. You've got an express statute here that says as the mayor gets benefits and salary, you don't have that where the judges are concerned.
Okay, so it's not going to have any on that at all. Okay, thank you.
Director Wright?
Yes. My question is about the leave hours, the PTO, is that what they call it? Does this ordinance cover that?
It's not touched by that at all. The requirement for the retirement benefit is mandatory upon the city. The 60-10 mandates the half-salary retirement, and it has nothing to do with any vacation or sick leave.
So we don't vote on that at all?
Not in voting on this ordinance, no, ma'am.
So if this passes, he doesn't automatically get.
This doesn't have anything to do with the vacation issue.
So when would that be determined?
Well, what you've got is you've got a state statute and a city ordinance that says that the mayor is going to get comparable salary and benefits as that given to the city manager.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, that just doesn't have anything to do with retirement.
Okay, well, I've had some constituent questions about that, and I told them that I would ask that question. I didn't think that it did, but I'm like Director Adcock. None of this was ever discussed by this board. At least I don't ever recall a discussion. I've never seen any documentation on it. I never knew any of this until last week? Yeah. So this is, everybody's entitled to retirement. I don't have any problem with that. As a retiree, I understand that. It just don't look right. I mean, I'm concerned about this COLA thing, up to 5%. That's a lot.
But that's for every employee.
So they wouldn't get it. So he would only get.
He would only get what the other
Everybody
employees
got.
get.
Okay.
Right.
Excuse me?
He would only get what the other employees would get if the employees give a COLA.
Okay, I'm familiar with COLA. I get that. And I look forward to it because my insurance go up every year, and that's what I used to pay the difference because you don't get it. I know that. But Director Adcock, to her question about what's this going to cost us over a period of time, and you're saying $800,000.
That's the number that Mr. Carrera gave, but that's where I also said, I'm not an actuary, and you don't need to listen to anything I say actuarially. That you really need to talk to Mr. Carrera about that.
But does he want to come and tell us?
That's up to y'all.
Yes, could we have Mr. Carrero come and clarify that, please?
Good evening, Madam Vice Mayor, board members. Again, I'm Jody Carrero. I'm the actuary that works for the retirement plans here for the city. And we did calculations of what the cost of this statutory benefit would be. And the cost of that statutory benefit was about $800,000. It was $770,000.
Could you give the
before that's
assumptions?
reduced?
I'm sorry to interrupt, but could you give the assumptions that go into that cost?
Yes, sir, I can. Yeah. So it would that cost would then be reduced by the money that's transferred in to finish that sentence. The assumptions that we used were the same assumptions as the big plan, as the big defined benefit plan. Now, just a side note, not to try to add in a layer of confusion here, but if the was funded just out of general funds, for example, a lot of cities just pay the mayor out of general funds at the end of the year or during the year and don't do this. But you still have to account for it, and you voted tonight to follow GASB, follow the governmental accounting standards. So you'd have to set up a liability for that. If you did it that way, you could just pay out the $400,000 until it was gone, but we'd have to set up a liability, which would be $130,000 more than the liability under the big plan. Does that make sense? And the key assumptions that are in the big plan is a 6.5 interest discount, and I could tell you the mortality table, but you would just look at me and wouldn't make any sense. But there's a mortality table and interest discount that's involved in that calculation. So the ordinance, as has been presented to you, has the base statutory benefit. It has the COLA that is in the big plan and no more. And it has the survivor benefit is paid for through an actuarial reduction. So it doesn't add to the cost of that. So with that COLA that's in the plan, the total cost of that is my estimate was $890,000 less the $400,000 that's already been discussed. So it's $490,000, just under $500,000 is the present value that would ultimately have to be paid for by the city to provide that benefit. As Mr. Carpenter appropriately pointed out, if you started doing this and they both passed away before the money that was paid out, was there, the city wouldn't have any further obligation, and those payments would be stopped. But if they live to their life expectancies, then that's the estimate of what that cost would be. Does that make sense?
Director Wright,
How do
do
we
you have
pay it? How do we pay it?
Well, I would suggest, and what I suggested in my report to the city manager is that just take that additional liability and amortize it over 10 years or less. And the example I gave was 10 years, and that was the number from last week's meeting where I said that was about $60,000 a year to make that up if it was paid out over 10 years.
Okay.
So I realize 60 times 10 is 600,000. It's not $500,000, but it's amortized. It's got the interest in there.
So let me make sure I'm clear in my head. He doesn't get this 60,000 replaces the 80,000 of half salary, or does he get both?
The 80,000, the half salary, would with a COLA that's in the big plan, that 80,000 per year would be paid from the retirement system, and the city then we'd work out a payment plan with finance to pay that difference in those expected present values.
So we pay 140,000 a year?
No,
So he would
no,
get
ma'am.
100
No, ma'am. The retirement plan would pay the 80,000, just as the state law says.
Right.
The city would pay, depending on what's decided,
The 60.
would pay 60 to the retirement plan each year.
Oh, it wouldn't go to him?
No.
But he wouldn't get it?
No, it would go to the retirement plan. So it would
So we're paying
replace
into the
part of
plan
that.
to pay,
Yes.
for them to pay out the 80?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Apologize if I wasn't clear on that. I know there's lots of moving pieces there.
Director Wright, do you have additional questions for Mr. Carrero?
No, I'm done.
Director Fortson?
I'm probably being repetitive, Jody, but in part of this discussion, it sounds like this is a separate single item retirement plan, and I want to clarify, this is actually a part of the big pie as far as the dollars you're talking about. Is that correct?
Yeah, yes, sir. What this ordinance does is it says instead of doing this as a standalone plan, we're going to put it in the big plan to more efficiently manage that liability.
And it would be, every year you evaluate that big plan and look at our unfunded liabilities, is that correct?
That is correct.
This would be done as part of that.
This would be done as part of that. Yes, sir.
And the same adjustment, for example, if Tom Carpenter retires and over a period of time, you would be calculating as part of the big picture what that unfunded liability would be and the payout on that, or if Joe Blow, anybody retires who's covered by the plan.
Yes, sir. We calculate it for all of the 1,000 active employees that are in there, plus the however many retirees are in there. We do that every year.
And it was your advice that any shortfall may be the wrong word, any needed additional payment under the annuity, under the life expectancy tables be covered in a 10-year period when you settle up, so to speak, at the end of the year.
Yes, sir. I mean, certainly from the plan standpoint, you could pay the whole difference right now, but I also know that that's probably not a feasible thing to do. So 10 years is, for something like this is probably kind of the longest period of time you would need to use.
But
if you wanted to use 5 years, I'd recalculate that. I'd be happy to.
It would be reviewed as the plan is reviewed by you with the trustees annually.
Yes, sir.
And then a calculation is made about the status, the financial health of the entire plan.
Yes, sir.
And that's one component of it.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And I would note that it's not in the ordinance, but already in the discussion, because we'll have to do an amendment to amend the plan, as Mr. Carpenter pointed out. But when we do that, it will be written so because the COLA that all the employees get, which is 2/3 of the CPI increase each year, can only be given if the plan meets certain funding standards. And so part of the amendment that we will bring back to you, depending on your decision tonight, will say that all employees' COLAs will not be affected by any unfunded for this mayor's piece, so to speak. So we will not negatively affect anyone because of that.
Okay. Thank you.
Director Hines?
All right, Jody, so everything you've been talking about is if we do what we've got in the ordinance, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let's talk about what happens if we don't do, because your analysis was that if we don't do it and we have a standalone plan, the out-of-pocket from the city is actually greater than going to this plan, correct?
It would be greater depending on what options that you added to that. Would you add a COLA to that? Would you add a spouse benefit to that if you did that on a standalone? But yes, sir.
Okay. So Tom, what are we bound? I thought we're already bound by something on that, which is a guaranteed COLA that's not.
No. The statute, the 6010 statute, allows the board to put into place a COLA. But then
Okay. So we would have to come back and we still have, if we don't do this tonight, then we still got an issue we got to address with that, correct?
Right. To illustrate it, let's say that what the mayor put into the plan that began in 2007 would pay him $30,000 a year in retirement benefits. Then under the statute, the board would have to pay $50,000 a year just to meet the statutory requirement on the 80, and that would come out of the general fund, because that's what the statute says.
Okay. So here's the other, just to clarify, I just want to make sure we all understand what we're talking about, and that Jody Carrero, our actuary that does this, is determined that this is the best course of business and the least, I don't know if we call it least liability, but it is the better of the two options of what we have on our plate. The other question is the $173,000. That was the mayor's own money that he put into the previous plan. So the reason he walks away with that is there's evidently tax implications. We can't roll it in. He can't roll it into the fund. There's tax implications for our fund.
That particular plan document that was established under says that the employee's money is 100% vested or owned by the employee.
So they get to, okay. So it's
Yes,
no different than
that's-
any of our
that's been-
employees if they're putting extra money in, that's their money that they keep.
Right.
Because
just-
it's in a,
yeah,
it's
just
in
like
a.
the employees that
it-
add to the Arkansas Diamond, that's their money.
Right, because that is a defined contribution, not a defined benefit.
Correct.
All right. I just want to clarify that that's his money that he's taken with him, that he's put into the fund over the last 12 years.
Yes, sir.
That's the 173,000.
Yes, sir.
It's 173,000.
It is 178.
170,
What
okay.
was the number I had?
Well,
Yes,
it's
sir.
gone up. Okay.
Right.
That's. No, Joan, I think you're there. Because we want to clear, because Joan thinks there's another $170,000 sitting out there.
173 is what he wants on his
The PT.
That has
That's
nothing,
not this
that-
issue.
That has nothing to do with this issue.
But both of them are not 173.
Well,
This one's
okay, it's
178.
178. Okay,
Yes.
well, I know I want to identify what is his money that's part of this retirement plan that he's put in. Because somebody's trying to make light that he's taking money out that's not his. This is money that he put in out of his own salary into the plan. It's 178,000.
Yes, sir. As
All
of
right.
June 30th, it was 178,000.
All right, thank you. And the city has put in 400,000 over that
The amount the city has put in has accumulated
related right. It's not a 400,000. It's grown with
Correct.
interest and compounded. All right, I think that's all my questions.
Director Compuros?
To be redundant, we have two choices, correct? We can maintain the present plan, fund it out of general fund at more cost, or we can do this. But we don't have the third option of saying, we're not going to do anything for your retirement because of the 60-10 rule. Is that right?
That's my understanding of what that section of state law says.
Is that right,
You
Tom?
have to do it.
That's correct.
So really, when it comes down to, if you look at it from what Joan asked, we have to fund the retirement fund. We do it through the fund, not through the general fund. So it doesn't take money out of the general fund to do what we need to do. It's less expensive than if we do it through the fund. We're meeting a statutory obligation. It's less money because he's paying for his spouse on the front side of it. Correct?
Yes, sir.
And we don't, I mean, this is like a lot of the things we vote on. We really don't have a choice of voting on it. I mean, there is not a door number 3. There's not a door number 3 saying, you know, we're just going to kick him to the curb and he's not. I mean, he's owed the money by the law. They've set the parameter of how much he gets. And I think it's very confusing about all this. And we try to, we mix it up with the other issue that we will have to decide. But this is a pretty straightforward issue to me. I mean, he's going to pay for a spouse. We have to pay what the state says. We can do it through the plan. It's got a controlled COLA, and all we do is pay the short of what he gets paid. Is that not right?
Yes, sir. That's what we tried to put together that has been written into this resolution. Yes, sir.
Then I will call the question again.
Okay, I will point out that we do have a card of somebody who would like to speak against it, but
call the question.
There's a motion and a second to call the question. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. I'm sorry. Okay, then, Madam Clerk, we have a request for a roll call on calling the question.
Director Wyrick? No. Director Campuris?
Yes.
Director Fortson? Director Adcock? No. Director Hendricks? Director Richardson?
No.
Director Peck? No. Director Hines? Yes. Director Wright? Yes. Vice Mayor Webb?
No.
4 to 6.
Okay, the question has not been called. I do have one more director who wanted to ask a question before I take this card. So, Director Adcock.
Mr. Carpenter, you said that he had 3 choices on the spousal benefit.
The plan has different choices on the spousal benefit. The 6010 statute says that the spouse is entitled to a half salary benefit. And as I understand from Ms. Witherell and others, that is something that can be purchased by any employee. So that's in the plan, but there are other options in the plan. Because of this, he would have any of those options he wished to choose.
And which option did he choose?
He hadn't chosen. This hasn't been passed yet.
And is there any of those options that would add more cost to the city of Little Rock?
No, ma'am, because the payment would come from the mayor's retirement benefit.
Okay. So whatever he chooses is not going to add any cost to the city?
That's my understanding. I will again defer to Mr. Carrero.
That is correct. The plan is written. It has lots of options, but they're all what we call actuarially equivalent. So if you do the joint and 50% survivor, that's similar to what's in the law, you don't get $1,000 a month. You get whatever it is, $920 a month. If you choose the 10-year certain, I mean, there's a 10-year certain in life. There is joint and 50, joint and 75, joint and 100, and then there's those 3 options with 10-year certain in life. So an individual has 9 different options that they can choose from. So,
but there's no additional.
But there's no additional cost to any of those.
Okay, and now the $60,000 per year, does that come out of the general fund, or where does that come from?
That would need to eventually be budgeted into the general fund to pay an additional payment to the retirement plan.
As I understood Dr. Campuris to say there wouldn't be any cost, but there is $60,000 a year for 10 years to offset this.
Yes, ma'am.
There would not be as much cost if we did the other plan, we have to pay more from the general fund to do that. There is a cost to make up the difference, but it's not what we'd have to pay if we left this plan in place right now.
Yeah, if you did this directly out of the general fund, due to the accounting rules and everything else, the liability would be significantly greater than doing it through the big retirement plan.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
What's significantly greater?
For, 120,000, if you did just the base benefit, it would be 170,000 with a full COLA. So it's in that range. It would cost the city an additional 120 to 170,000 over the long run if they did a standalone plan. If you did not do something similar than what's proposed in this.
Thank you. As I said, we have one card who would like to speak against this, Russ Raycott.
Thanks. I don't know if y'all looked at it, but last week after the meeting, I sent you some documents that I had obtained through the Freedom of Information Act. It was some letters and memos and things like that that had a lot of this information in it, or a lot of the questions that had come up at the last meeting, the agenda meeting that I provided to you guys in case it wasn't in your packet from Mr. Moore. And in that document, what I found was, I know that Director Adcock and some others have kind of wondered why this is coming up now. We haven't heard about this. Well, the reason you hadn't, it's like a lot of things that happen with the city. The mayor has been working on it for a long time from June. That's why all these figures that Jody has are back as of June, because that's when the mayor said, I'm not going to run again, and I want to get my parachute ready. Now, firstly, I want to deal with this. The proposed ordinance, and I guess on line 27, whereas the city's defined benefit plan allows for certain cost of living increases and is permitted to provide for spousal survivor benefits, this ordinance permits the mayor to receive such benefits. The ordinance doesn't say that the mayor is going to pay for those benefits. Now, I think if I understood correctly, the actuarial guy said that it was worked out somehow in the plan. But I think that's something that needs to be addressed: is where are those? Who is paying for those benefits? Is it the mayor? Is it the city? Is it this plan? If it goes in with that, I think that needs to be asked. Now,
Line 17, page 3, paid by direct reimbursement or through actuarial equivalent factor.
okay, well, I don't know what that is, but if I had the hammer, I would have to hammer it down, because I think he's speaking out of turn. But what you have here is this. Excuse me a second. Let me pull the right thing up here. The attorney. There was a letter that that I emailed to all of you from December the 15th of this year. It was to Mr. Jody. Is it Carrero? To him from the tax attorney, which was Craig Westerbrook. And in that letter, and I was kind of surprised. I asked if there was another one, because my copy had it was a draft, and I can't believe that an attorney would send a draft of a letter out to anybody. That's kind of unprofessional. But there was a question in there where it says about the statutory benefits and excess contributions and so on and so on, and it was talking about the money that the mayor put in, the $173,000, I think was the number that was used. Not to confuse it with the vacation pay stuff. But he'd said on here, the response as, we may not be able to eliminate any doubt on whether employee contributions can be retained by the city. And then he goes on in here to say that would be up to a judge. And I know that there's some corresponding things here, but I think you would have to rely on the information from a tax attorney who's schooled in the law and represents these in courts, as opposed to someone who can tell you when you're going to die and how much is going to be paid out over the expected remainder of your life. Now, another issue that had come up here, and again, this goes back to the spousal benefits. This was an email from Mr. Carrero back on December 7th that says that the city is not going to pay for spouse benefits. And he does go and he can pay for the benefit through actuarial reduction in the same way other participants do. So I think that's his answer to that, how that's going to be paid out. But I still would like that to be clear in the ordinance so that there's not questions, because we've seen this on some other matters over the years that if it's not spelled out in there, it can be construed or misconstrued, and we need to have this correctly attributed. Now, I've looked over the statute that Mr. Carpenter's referred to here, that talks about how this stuff is paid. And when he said in here that the $250 per benefit month could only be paid for unsalaried mayors, well, and section, this is Title 24, Chapter 12, Subchapter 1, item number A4, the minimum retirement benefit shall be $250 per month for both salaried and unsalaried mayors. And it goes into here also where it indicates that the retirement benefit shall be paid monthly and shall be paid from the city general fund. And then it also says if authorized by an ordinance, it talks about how that this plan comes out, and the other legislative act that it refers to, Title 14, Chapter 3, Chapter 42, Subchapter 1. These were in the letters that you received, that the employee or the elected official may choose whether to receive a retirement benefit provided by law, that's the statutory plan, or one that's offered by the municipality, which is the one that he's in. So it seems to me that this statute gives the mayor the ability to select which plan, and that may be something Mr. Carpenter can address. But again, you know, the mayor is entitled to retirement. I think we know that. There was an email from Ms. Witherall who had that he wasn't entitled to a plan, and I don't know if that was a misstatement or something, but there was an email that talked about the change in that he wasn't entitled to the benefit for the service. But I think that we need to have these questions ironed out about what the statutes actually say, what the benefit is, and where it's coming from to comply with that. And again, I think that we have to look at it not in what is in the best benefit for this mayor or any future mayors, but what is in the best interest of the city. And if, like what Director Campuris has said, that there's a cost factor involved and that can be substantiated, then I think the decision that you need to make is best made on the best interest of the city and not of the mayor. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Carrero, I think at one point you were responding to something. Do you want to clarify that for us, please, or would you?
Well, he asked a very good question as to where does it say how the spouse benefit is taken care of, and that was something that was a concern to all of us that were discussing this, and I had my finger on the ordinance and lost it. Okay. On the ordinance that you have on page 3 of that ordinance, line 17 and 18, it says that the spousal benefit or any other option, starting on 16, any other option provided through this DB plan, provided the cost of the spousal benefit is paid by direct reimbursement to the plan or through actuarial equivalence factors provided in the plan. So this actually allows the mayor, if he wished, to reimburse the plan for the cost of a spousal benefit, or he can take a reduction in his monthly benefit to pay for it. That's pretty standard pension plan type language there. That's in that paragraph.
So either way, no cost to the city.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Tom, did you have something you wanted to say? It looked like you did a minute ago.
I was just going to give the page site and the line site.
Okay. Director Hines? The question has been called and seconded. All in favor of passage of the ordinance signify by, I'm sorry. Yeah, all in favor of calling the question?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that passes. So all in favor of passage of the ordinance signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Nay.
No. That was not.
Roll call.
It wasn't Joan that said nay.
Roll call.
Okay, there's a request for a roll call, Madam Clerk. If you will, read the roll.
Director Wyrick? No. Director Campuris? Director Fortson? Director Adcock? Director Hendricks? Director Richardson? Director Peck? Director Hines?
Aye.
Director Wright? Vice Mayor Webb?
No.
Director Richardson, would you like to change your vote? No, you don't want to change your vote?
Vice Mayor needs the count.
Oh, I'm sorry. 6 aye, 2 nays, 1 present, 1 absent.
Okay. So the ordinance passes. There's also an emergency clause. So all in favor of passage of the emergency clause?
Aye.
Opposed? The emergency clause passes. Thank you. And now we will, Director Wright.
Mr. Carpenter, you said, of course, this did not have anything to do with the hours, the paid time off hours. When will we get to address that? Or will it ever be addressed? I need my constituents that asked those questions to hear. Do we get to vote on that? Because they,
Director Wright, what the state statute says, what the city ordinance says, is he gets comparable to what the city manager has in terms of vacation buyout at the end of employment. Y'all made a motion as to the city manager at the last meeting, and I think what you did then is going to be something that can be called comparable. If there's no question on that, that's what will happen. If there is a question on that, then somebody needs to bring it up.
so that would be,
Or it can be something that can be dealt with as we would deal with any other employee.
Madam Vice Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to change my vote to no on the ordinance that we just passed.
As the ordinance has been passed, you're going to have to get unanimous consent to change your vote.
Even though we haven't recessed the meeting?
Okay, and so,
Well, I think you misled me a little bit because I thought we'd have a chance to discuss the PTO hours. Now you're telling me.
we can discuss that now.
Point of order, point of order.
Director Hines?
Tom, we were addressing the ordinance, was
I asked a question about it.
Tom, the ordinance we were discussing, the PTO issue is not germane to that ordinance, correct, and could not be addressed in that discussion of that ordinance.
PTO was not germane to the issue of the retirement benefits to be given to the mayor pursuant to the state
And
statute.
I asked if we could discuss that. And I
And
thought
I
got a
didn't
yes.
say no just a minute ago. I didn't say
And,
yes.
and I think there are some people who have lights on who want to discuss that now. So are we good?
If not, I'm gonna, whether you approve it or not, I want to be noted as a no, because if we're not gonna discuss that. Because
think
that's
we're-
what
I
my
think that's the
constituents have
intention
asked
right
me
now,
about,
to
those
discuss
leave
that.
hours.
Director Adcock?
I want to clarify something, Tom, that you just said. When we talked last week in executive session, at that point, we said.
Well, executive session is supposed to not be made public.
Mr. Moore's was changed, but it was changed as of 2019. It was not changed retroactive. The only thing that we went back and changed to 2018 was your salary, your raise. But on Mr. Moore, it was 2019. So, I'm getting tired of hearing that
I
you're
have
comfortable.
highlighted what the actual motion was, and those are being passed around. This is a transcript of the discussion that occurred at the meeting.
What occurred in, okay, make the motion now. And this was as of 2019. It was not to go back. No place on this does it say 2018, because our discussion was 2019. And this is just something used now to get us to do, just like we just got through doing, is voting for this because you're going to use statutory and all this. And I'm like Doris. I'm feeling like I'm being set up.
Director Adcock, I'm sorry you feel that way. I took this motion that was given last week is that henceforth the city manager will essentially have the same provision that I have in terms of accrued vacation, which is he can accrue up to 1,040 hours, which is 6 months, that can be taken upon the time that he leaves.
You're assuming you wasn't in there. And maybe we need to have a vote with this board. But I assumed, and I heard, because I think I made the motion in there, that we changed Bruce's to yours.
Right.
On 2019, not going back to 2018. Because I'm like Doris, I want this 173,000 discussed in public because the people out here want to hear it. And I don't care if some of the directors have not heard from people. They can answer my telephone anytime they want to, or they can have names to call people. But I want this discussed publicly. That was the reason last week we asked that the other one that we just passed was postponed till today, was because we wanted it publicly with the public. Because right now, on the city board, there was enough confusion, everything with a recent election. And I want everything discussed in public so everyone knows exactly how I feel about something.
My understanding from Vice Mayor Webb is that the question on the vacation issue is about to be discussed.
That is fine.
All I was saying to Director Wright, or it's trying to say to Director Wright, is that the vacation had nothing to do with the retirement. And what happens from here is you've got the parameters set for you by state statute and by your own ordinance, and how that's carried out is not something I decide.
Director Peck.
Thank you. Thank you, Vice Mayor. And Director Adcock, I think a lot of us, including me, have had phone calls and emails from constituents about this concern. So I'm glad we're discussing it. And I'm curious as to why we don't perhaps move to defer this until the other issue with elected officials and vacation pay has been decided. You know, that's been out there for quite some time. So with the elected officials, the judges,
well, I think they're totally different. There is no judge in Arkansas that gets vacation pay, nor ever has.
Well,
there's a statute in Arkansas that deals with, legally, there's a statute in Arkansas that deals with mayor's retirement and benefits.
And vacation pay?
It says benefits. It's very broad, but I would think that vacation pay would be a benefit.
And I would like to ask the city manager to address that. Bruce, could you address that so we could hear, please?
Actually, I was just trying to clarify with Tom his comment about there's been no judge it's paid, and that wouldn't be accurate. And he and I will, disagree, but we have done that in the past, and so I wanted to clarify that issue.
The point I was making is legally. There has been no legal payment of vacation to any judge in Arkansas.
Okay, Director Peck, did you have additional questions? We've got a couple of other people who want to
I'll wait and hear what
speak, and
the
then
other
we'll come
comments are.
back.
Thank you.
Okay. Director Wyrick?
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I want to reiterate what Joan said. When we made the vote to ask for the PTO, it was for 2019. It was not retroactive to 2018. So if we're looking at apples and apples, then the 1024 would not even play into this year's debate for this PTO for the mayor. The other thing that I would like to say is that I object to the fact that Doris wanted to change her vote, and you're saying that's not possible to do. And I know we've had other directors that have changed their votes after the vote was taken, and that has never been done to them. So
It has been. It can only be done with unanimous consent, and that's what I said.
I've sat here and watched it happen.
And
where
I've
we've
sat
had
here
to-
and watched Director Hendricks, for example, be denied the opportunity to change her vote because there was not unanimous consent.
I recall her changing her vote. So I don't know that that's ever came up before, but I object to that because I think she has the right to change her vote. But the 1,024 hours would be for 2019 and not 2018. So I think we need to take that off the table.
Director Fortson?
Question, I guess, Mr. Moore, in the biweekly paycheck that employees receive, is there not a window in there that shows PTO time earned?
That's correct.
And
along with short-term disability also, but yeah.
Okay. And so for a long-term employee like Mr. Carpenter, does that keep accruing and building up on that paycheck?
It does.
Have
And
we
then
had
when
the
they-
option in the past
go
to
ahead.
say, pay me for part of it?
So, would you repeat the question?
I said, has a situation existed in the past where any employee who had a number of hours built up could say, pay me for part of it and take cash for it?
No, the system that's in place, and Stacy will correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a maximum that employees can carry, and at the end of the year, if they're over that, and their department director can petition me. There are some unusual circumstances. We've been short of staff. Would you allow, and it comes in about this time every year, would you allow the employee to carry over X amount and take it?
And has there been any limitation, or does there exist a limitation on how much that employee can accrue over a period of employment when he or she leaves employment?
Let me ask Stacy to come forward. There's a lot of numbers that float out there. So, Mr. Witherall.
Good evening.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor. Director Fortson, conceivably there is a limit on the amount of PTO, which is for this category vacation, that an employee can carry over. As the city manager discussed, department directors can petition him to carry over in excess of that amount. And occasionally we do have those circumstances where employees may petition several years in a row. But again, there is a limitation set according to city manager policy of how much leave or PTO they can be carried.
How is that limitation determined, Stacy?
That determination is basically based upon employee group. As we've talked previously, we have different employee groups in the city. For instance, department directors can carry over 400 hours of PTO versus the rest of the non-uniform, non-union employees can carry over 320, and then our union eligible employees represented by AFSCME carry over 240 hours of vacation, and very similar limits for our uniform employees.
In your experience here, can you recall the largest amount of accrued but uncollected that you paid out on termination?
You mean accrued and paid out?
Accrued but previously uncollected, that on termination was paid to that employee.
The practice has been if you've accrued that leave for everyone besides the city manager and the mayor, because we've not experienced that, you are paid out everything that is accrued at that point in time that you depart the city. However, as we discussed last board meeting, I believe it was a question by Director Wright, we had some vague records in our personnel file regarding the city manager, and then when the mayor became full-time and had similar benefits, we set them up similarly. There was something in the file that said that there was a 500 maximum to be paid out.
When you accrue those and they appear on the paycheck, are we setting up, and this may be a question I need to ask, are we setting up a liability for them on our books?
Yes, we are. The finance department looks at that January 1 of every year, and the liability is reported appropriately.
What liability are you carrying on your books right now for Mark Stodler?
I do not have the final number, but currently he is allowed, because we removed the maximums off the plan because of the uncertainty of the questions about how much he was actually supposed to accrue, and like the city manager said, the excess, what happens to that? Because right now, if I'm in excess of the 400, that gets moved over to my short-term disability account. But because that, we felt it administratively necessary to remove the maximums off the PTO. And last count, it was over 2,200, I believe.
So, and that number appears on his paycheck?
Currently, yes.
But in your case, what you just said, you don't lose the benefit. It gets put into a different category. To use it then, you've got to get ill.
For everybody else, that would be the practice on 12/31 every year. Anything over the maximum, unless it's approved otherwise by the city manager, gets moved over to the short-term disability account until you reach that maximum.
So for those two exceptions, though, you have been accruing an amount over any limitation for the city manager and the
Correct.
mayor.
They have accrued more than the 500 limitation that's noted in the personnel file.
Is there any other position for which you've gone to that limit?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Director Wright?
I think she answered my question. You said it's capped at 500, right?
The documentation in the personnel file mentions a 500-hour limitation on PTO.
Okay. Anything over that, what happens to those hours in this instance? Could he donate those to the employees?
We don't have a mechanism to devote that. But again, administratively, we removed the 500 maximum to allow that additional time because we weren't sure if the 500 was a maximum, if it's reached during the year, or if the 500 was in fact the maximum carryover that should occur on 12/31 every year. And anything in excess of that, we were unclear if that time should be moved over to the short-term disability following the practice that's established for all other employees.
Well, I know in state government you accrue sick and annual.
Correct.
And I believe it was 140 hours, 120. Anything in excess of that, if you didn't use it, you lost it, period.
Correct.
Okay. Sick leave you could donate to a database for, I think it was catastrophic leave.
And we have a robust catastrophic leave program where employees can donate more than the minimum required if they so chose.
Well, my constituents are having a problem with 2,200 hours. That's what the concern is. Everybody understood he is entitled to retirement. This is what they got a problem with. And I do too, because there needs to be a cap on this stuff. And not just been do stuff willy-nilly without having some type of constraints in there, because this is actually something we're setting precedents for, and I don't like setting precedents unless we got policy to back it up. That's all I got.
Thank you. Director Hines.
Thanks. Tom, let's go back to the whole issue of compensation and your decision that comparable does not mean identical, correct?
Right.
Where it comes to the mayor's pay. So what we have here is we have a city manager that we have given pay raises to over the last 12 years, which has increased his contribution to his retirement. We have a mayor that we have not given a pay raise to in 12 years, but has been allowed to accrue 2,200 hours of PTO. I know we have an actuary in the deal, and I'd have to go back and get it, but Jody, what's the quick math on 160,000 and a 1.5% increase every year over 12 years? I know that's simple math. You can compound that out. Because I know some raises were 1.5%, some were 3%, some weren't. So let's just take a 1.5% average over 12 years, just to give us a round number. What would the total compensation for the mayor be?
191.
All right. And so that would have been 191. What would the pay raise be each year? Difference between 160 and that total number. The total number of I'm trying to get to a total number of, if you take his yearly pay and the pay increase every year, what's the difference between 160 and that end number over 12 years? You know what I'm saying? Roughly. That's not as easy, I know. I'd have to write it out each year on my piece of paper and add them all up. But I would imagine to say it's probably more than 173,000. Or pretty close. What? Well, I'd have to draw it out and run it. Anyway, what I'm saying here is we've had a mayor who served the city for 12 years. We have a difference in that we have had an ordinance that is imperfect, and that, you know, I've had no calls on or about the mayor's vacation pay. I look at it as we haven't given him a pay raise, and if this is the benefit he carries away, which has less of an impact on retirement, because if you've been getting pay raises, our contributions, it escalates everything. So this is probably the lesser of the two evils for us, not giving him pay raises over the last 12 years.
Director Adcock.
Several times in the last 12 years that members of this board has discussed pay raises, and there was never 6 votes to do one. So raises are given when 6 of us at least agree on something. So that's my statement on that. I think this is kind of ridiculous. Well, that's enough for now.
Director Wyrick.
It was stated earlier that administratively, for the leave, that there was somewhere around 2,200 or 2,000 that showed up for Studley, and administratively it was removed. I don't understand the statement about administratively. Can you explain?
You need Stacy to come back and
explain
answer
it
that.
to me again.
When an employee is set up in a leave plan, there is a maximum that is put upon that leave plan. For instance, for example, I have 400 as the maximum carryover that I can keep after 12/31. If I had not used my time, I lose it, or it goes to my short-term disability account. In this instance, because of the uncertainty of how that should be that 500 should be applied to the city manager's plan, and then thus the mayor's plan. Instead of leaving that 500-hour cap on those plans, we changed it so it was unlimited. That way, it could be accrued, and then at some point, which appears to be today, the board could decide what needs to happen with that. Because again, we weren't sure whether the 500 cap that was previously voted by the board meant that it was 500 at the end of the year or 500 at some point during the year. If he reached the 500, he was not to accrue more than that.
So my question is, when did you decide to do that? What time frame?
It was before the mayor was elected. And then once the mayor was elected, we set him up similarly.
In 2007?
Before that date.
Before that date? Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. That's what I need to know. Thank you.
Director Adcock.
Stacy? Shouldn't that, instead of being your decision, shouldn't that been a policy decision by this board?
Yes, ma'am. That would be your decision. The intent was just so that administratively we didn't have to keep up with when the time should be lost or not. The short-term fix was just to remove the cap, and then at some point the board would address those questions.
Said that in his file there's a $500 a paper with $500 limit on it. Then you just said that this was all decided before the mayor was hired?
Correct. There's a documentation that said that there was a 500 limitation on the PTO. And then when the mayor became full-time, we set him up to be similarly situated like the city manager. Again, not addressing what the 500 cap really meant.
What isn't the city manager at 500 cap?
Not if you look at the plan or if you look at his pay stub. He accrues, and there's not a limit.
What we did last week was we removed that 500 cap off of Bruce starting in 2019. So if we did that, why did we do that if it was already removed?
Well, administratively, we removed the limitation so that it could be accounted for when the board decided what was to happen in excess of that 500.
Well, I've heard lots of employees over the last few weeks saying how much time they was going to lose because they haven't taken it. So
Correct.
Evidently our employees are having to lose several hundred hours. But we're trying to make an exception for the mayor on a policy that this board did not ever set up.
Well, again, depending on which employee group you are in, if you earn PTO and your department director does not seek approval for you to carry over the maximum, it is moved to the short-term disability account until you reach that maximum. So there is that possibility that employees lose PTO. And, again, if the department director doesn't request or the employee doesn't make that request of their department director to ask for the approval of the city manager, then that PTO is lost or moved to short-term disability.
There's going to be lots of department heads that's going to be upset with you saying that, because I know of lots of employees. I'm going to go back and say, hey, you can just go ask so-and-so, and all he can do is request it, and then you can have all these extra hours and you can have a check. But because these employees I know some of them, and they have been marking off hours for years.
We have a lot of dedicated employees that do not take all of their leave benefits.
We can say they have lots of wanting to serve the community.
We do. Mm-hmm. We have excellent employees.
Okay, thank you.
Director Peck.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Well, I just think it's regrettable that here on the last meeting of the year that this all comes to a head. I mean, it's been out there for so long, and it's, I think, just it's a shame. I think that there's so many questions, so much confusion. I think we should table this. I just think that there's too much information for me to wrap my head around. I have gotten numerous emails and numerous phone calls with questions. So I'm not comfortable voting. I don't know about everybody else, but I would move to table this. I move, yes, Director Wright.
Motion to table, you need to set a time certain.
Okay.
Yes.
Um,
Director Hines?
It's not debatable. We don't have anything to table because there hasn't been a motion made or seconded on any of this. All we've been having is a discussion.
I think she's moving to table the discussion. That's what I understood.
yeah, yes. Yes.
But you
yes,
still need to say
thank
that that's
you.
certain.
No,
With the
thank you,
time-
Director Hines. Yes, a move to table the discussion. Yes,
With the
thank
time
you.
certain to
With that,
when?
30 days. 1 month.
Could you make it like
Just-
last meeting in December or last
But this
agenda
is-
meeting?
this
I mean,
is the last
January.
meeting
No,
in
no, right,
December.
right. I meant
The
last meeting in January or
How's
last
that?
agenda meeting in January.
How about the last agenda meeting in January? That's
January
30 days.
29th?
January 29th?
Okay, we have a motion to table this discussion.
Just to clarify, that means that at the meeting before the 29th, you will need to recess until the 29th in order to bring back this discussion. I'll get that worked out. Your last meeting in January
Is an agenda
is an
meeting.
agenda meeting. So it's a regular board meeting before that. Instead of adjourning, you will recess to the 29th to have this discussion.
So are we moving to table this discussion to the 22nd or the 29th, just for simplicity's sake?
I want it on a 4 o'clock day.
That would be the 29th.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second to table this discussion until January the 29th. All in favor of tabling the discussion?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. The discussion is tabled until then. Thank you. Director Adcock?
There is another issue out here that is going to cause problems for us. And when I started hearing about it, I asked Tom to find us research on it. And here's a copy of what the ordinance or the Arkansas Code number 1447117 is. And it also, on the second page, it gives you the state stuff on this. Electing what we call vice mayor, they call a assistant mayor, has always been the board's job. And I understand that some people that may be here next month thinks that they get to appoint the assistant mayor. So this is all the information about that, so that we know exactly what what statutory it says, so we know whose job it is and how it's supposed to be done.
Thank you, Director Adcock. Director Wright?
I just wanted to make sure that in the minutes of this meeting, that you do note in there, I know sometimes you don't do word for word, I understand that, but I wanted noted that I did attempt to change my vote and I was denied that. Thank you.
Rachel, do you want one?
Well, I've returned. I feel like I've not had a chance to have my own voice heard on these issues. And first of all, I'm sorry that the timing of this being the first mayor elected full time has to have this discussion go on. And as I think was pointed out by Mr. Rakop, even when I decided not to run for re-election, I did seek out to try and get these issues resolved. And it is complicated stuff. I don't know how many people have dealt with actuarial information, but there's very few people that know how to do it. And so I did talk to Mr. Carrera, and he's been helpful in trying to navigate these issues. So that's point number one. On the other issue, let me just say that the law, the ordinance that the board and the citizens passed, and the law that was passed.
Mayor, at this point, you can't talk about the vacation issue. You recused appropriately and left the room. January the 2nd, you can say anything you want.
All right. Well, All right, I'll take that advice from our city attorney. I do think that I should have an opportunity to try and clear the air and clear that issue up for board members, and I'll do that when I have an opportunity.
Your Honor, Tom, would it be appropriate for us to discuss vacation issues in executive session since it deals with a personnel matter?
Yes,
Yes, it would. All right.
particularly because you don't just discuss the vacation of one person. You've got to discuss it as comparable to another person by
correct.
state law.
All right, so we could go into executive session, and the mayor could be party in that executive
Oh.
session. Any employee that we have in executive session, if it's
You
Bruce
could
Hughes.
tonight, but you can't on January 22nd.
I mean, when we have employee reviews, when we have discussion, could we not, I mean, if we
Well,
were
you've got to
discussing.
come out and vote. I mean, the point
Right.
is, you're not going to be able to discuss with him an issue that he's recused upon. If you want to ask a factual question, were you at work on January the 1st of 2016? That would be appropriate. But the other part in an executive session, I don't think would be appropriate. But I'm going to tell you, that's a new one, and I will look into that.
All right, thank you.
Well, I do want to, I certainly do want our citizens to know that I have taken vacation. In fact, I've taken about 12 weeks of vacation. So it's not like I have not taken vacation. In any event, if I can't speak on it now, I'll find a way to communicate my voice other ways. All right, we do have one other item on our agenda. Well, actually, two items on our agenda. The first item is a third quarter financial report from Sarah Lenahan. Mr. Moore?
We can defer that until meeting in January. I'm fine with that.
All right. Is there any objection to that? Motion and a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed say nay. We do have citizen communication, and we have a card from Mr. Raycop.
I know I've been a voice sometimes in opposition to what you've done, but I want to take this opportunity to thank you for your service to the city. I would encourage you, as one of your last acts, to take some action on the only Confederate statue that sits on city property in Little Rock, and that's the one that's outside of the Military Museum. I know that you've spoken highly of New Orleans Mayor Mitch Landrieu for going after those, and at the security summit that was held earlier this year, you made reference to that. And I think some of my associates have been working with City Manager Bruce Moore to try to facilitate removal of that statue to a more appropriate location off of city property. But that's something that we might go a long ways in helping heal some issues in our city and setting a good example for future generations. And just ask you to consider taking some action and using the power that you have for the last couple of weeks to maybe help out that way. And while they've been talking about money and things like that tonight, I don't know if you have divested yourself of your carryover funds that you had, but if I might make a suggestion that if you're doing that with some of the worthwhile charities that you do, you might consider a donation to Arkansas Stop the Violence. They have their annual bike fundraiser and giveaway going, and they have a lot of people who made pledges to support that have kind of backed out like they usually do, but they've had some people step up today. They had a man volunteer, I think it was around 100 bicycles, an anonymous donor to do that. So again, I've enjoyed the conversations that we've had, and if you want to get your side of the story out about this, just write a piece and I'll publish it on my blog for you. So thank you very much, and good luck to you in your endeavors.
Thank you, Mr. Raycop. Actually, if Benny Johnson would get in touch with me, I'm certainly that's a worthy cause, and obviously I will be contributing funding to a variety of charities, most likely, organizations, clearly. There's no timeline on that, but I'll be happy to take care of Christmas for Stop the Violence, number one, if you'll get a hold of me. Plus, I've got a couple of bicycles that have been barely ridden that would make some really good wheels for somebody. And if somebody will follow back up with me, I'll be happy to get those out to them as well. On the statute, I'm well aware of that, and I did speak highly of what happened down in New Orleans. This is a National Historic Landmark, and the land is too, and it's a little bit complicated about the federal law about removing statutes on where you've got a National Historic Landmark. So I'm sympathetic to the issue and want to see it done. Clearly, as the Chief Executive Officer, I think many of the things that heretofore have been talked about are ministerial acts and can be done as an executive action. And I'll look into that and see whether or not we can figure out a way to deal with that matter and find a location for it in the next couple of weeks, if that's possible. If it's not going to be because there's not a lack of desire.
Mayor?
Okay. Yes, Director Hines.
Since this is your last meeting, I do have a comment. I just want to let you know that coming to this board as which is hard to believe, it's already been 8 years, as a young 42-year-old and now a 50-year-old, I want to tell you that I appreciate working with you as a colleague on this board and this with all of our colleagues up here. You've made it fun, sometimes teeth gnashing, but always. And I'll attest, and I said this at your going away party, is that as I've defended some of your decisions with some of my more conservative friends, is that at the end of the day, you always have the best interest of this city and its citizens at heart. Now, sometimes you and I disagree about how we get there, but we both end up at the end of the day there. The other thing I would like to tell you is that not only do I count you as a colleague, but I definitely consider you a friend, and I look forward to continuing to work with you in whatever the next chapter in your life goes with, and also look forward to having another whiskey and another duck hunt with you.
Well, I'll have plenty of time for that. Well, let me. I know everybody wants to go, and so I'm not gonna belabor my final comments in my final board meeting. But let me just say, it's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure to preside over our meetings. I consider all of you hardworking colleagues and friends. I would never ask you to do anything that I didn't think was fair and honest. And I know that as we chart new waters, it's not always democracy is not a very easy task. Sometimes it gets kind of messy every once in a while, and God forbid that we all have the same idea. We'd be pretty boring, and nobody'd be watching us on TV probably. I think I would to say to our citizens that we have made great improvements with everybody that has served in the capacity of mayor, and I'm very fortunate over these 12 years that I believe we've made great progress over the last 12 years in this city too. And it wasn't done just by a mayor; it was done because of the hard work of all of you, and you all have your passion and dedication for what you do, and I respect each and every one of you because of that. I know the city is going to be good. It's going to move forward, and and I'm confident that I will continue to contribute to the betterment of the city in so many different ways that I haven't even imagined yet. So, with that said, it's been a great ride, and we are adjourned. I heard a motion, didn't I? All right.